Alright, we're back for another update and forecast on the Caldor Fire. This is going to be one of those live streams that isn't just a concise 30-minute video. This one is most likely going to be over the span of maybe 3 or 4 hours, because this is a situation that we are going to have to follow over the next 3 or 4 hours, because there's a lot changing by the minute on the Caldor Fire. And I think the first map that I should show before anything else is this one right here that shows that all of South Lake Tahoe has now moved into that mandatory evacuation warning. So where you see that red color there, that means that as of right now, there is a mandatory evacuation order, and now is not the time to prepare to leave anymore. Now is the time to just get out of there. So that's going to be one of the big maps that we keep coming back to throughout this live stream, just so that anybody living in this area gets this kind of news. I usually don't ask people to share videos, but in this case, this could be a good one to share throughout the day today, because this is going to be an ongoing situation that is affecting a large amount of people. And what we're going to do throughout the course of this video is update on all the most recent information from the various sources where we can find it, and then we'll also stay updated with the fire weather forecast to see how those winds and the relative humidity are impacting the fire. So just looking at what the Caldor Fire has done throughout the day, you can see that early this morning we already had a large amount of activity. Again, if you were watching my update and forecast last night, we followed that for about 3.5 hours when it grew, I believe, maybe 5 or 7 miles. We'll get the exact number on that in just a moment when CAL FIRE does their update, and we'll tune into that. But there was a large amount of activity last night, and then throughout last night, we didn't get that good relative humidity recovery. It stayed dry all night long, which allowed the fire to continue, which meant it was still active in the morning. And then this afternoon, once those winds have picked up, once our relative humidity has dropped down, you can see that the activity on the Caldor Fire itself has picked up as well. If we want to see actually what it looks like on the ground as of right now, this is a time lapse from the last 3 hours from the Leak Springs camera, where you can see it looks like there's maybe a weather station here, some other kinds of structures on this ridgeline, and certainly more activity than we were seeing earlier this morning. So it looks like that low relative humidity and those winds have in fact started to kick up, and we're seeing an increase in fire behavior on those same 2 spots that we were following so closely over the last couple of days. So it's mostly, the spot that we're mostly going to be following is that northern section that is making a push towards a lot of those structures that we see in South Lake Tahoe. But we're also going to be keeping a very close eye on the southeastern section that appears to be making a run towards Kirkwood as well. We will keep our eye on that western finger that we've talked about so much in the past, where it keeps jumping over those containment lines. But again, I think the big part of the story that we're going to be following over the next few hours is that northeastern and southeastern section right there, because those are the areas of the fire that are near the largest amount of structures. So there's the Caldor Fire right there. You can see that fire perimeter is in the yellow shaded color. Where you see those red dots, that's where the active hotspots have been recently. And then the reason I'm so focused on this northeastern section and that eastern section right there is because if we turn on the structures, everywhere where you see an orange dot represents a structure. So you can see right here we have Kirkwood, and with those southwesterly winds, what it's going to be trying to do, what it's going to try to do to this hotspot right here is push that closer towards Kirkwood. So that's one of the key areas we have to follow. And then also all of these structures that we see getting into the South Lake Tahoe area, with those southwest winds, it's going to try to push that fire farther up to the northeast. So that's, I think, the number one spot that we'll have to follow over the next few hours. One thing that I will show is I'm hesitant to show this just because we've seen in the past how wrong this map can be. So I say this, you can take this with a grain of salt, but I do like to show this because it does relatively show which direction the fire is moving. That's where it was yesterday. This is where the satellite is currently picking up some hot spots. But again, that has been prone to some error in the past. So I don't believe that all of those structures right there are actually covered in that hotspot. That's a key thing to always think about when you see this kind of map, but it does paint the picture that those are the key areas that we have to think about, those structures up on the northern edge of the Caldor Fire and that eastern edge right there, as some of those hotspots appear to be getting closer towards the Kirkwood area. Now, I mentioned the weather forecast a couple of times, and that's really the big story of what's been allowing this fire to pick up throughout the last couple of hours. Is we've had very low relative humidity the last couple days, and then what's different about this afternoon compared with yesterday afternoon is we have some of those stronger wind gusts. So that pink color right there represents the red flag warning that is covering the entire Caldor Fire. And basically, whenever you have a red flag warning, that means that there's the potential for a faster rate of spread and the potential for new fire starts. And that's something that we've already seen playing a role on this northeastern section over the last couple of hours. I've seen a number of updates that have said that there's some spotting going on where burning embers are picked up by the winds, dropped into those critically dry fuels, and start a new little fire. That's one of the things that you often see happen when a red flag warning like that is in place. So again, those are the key areas that we're going to be following throughout the course of this video. The main reason for that is those southwesterly winds that are going to continue to push that fire farther to the northeast. When it comes to the most recent numbers, you can see that this was updated at about 3:30, and it's saying we're up to 177,000 acres. If we want to look at when that growth has happened, that green color there represents where the fire started, where it burned on the 15th, 16th, and 17th, and then where it transitions into that redder and purple color, that's where it's burned more recently. And that dark purple color shows where it burned just yesterday. So on Friday and Saturday, we actually had relatively calm conditions over the Caldor Fire because the winds were weaker. It allowed a nice smoke inversion over the fire, kept our fire behavior down. But yesterday, the winds started to pick up a little bit, that smoke cleared out, and the fire activity picked up as well. And you can see how much growth we had yesterday in those two key spots that we're following today. The main reason for that, we have the same dry air and clear conditions that allowed a lot of that activity that we saw yesterday to happen. But today we have even stronger winds, and I hate to say it, but tomorrow it looks like we have even stronger winds than we're seeing right now. So if we zoom in there, you can see where that fire perimeter was the last time this map was updated, which I believe was about 9 hours ago. So we have seen more growth since this map came out, but you can see it looks like the fire perimeter almost reaching up to the Echo Lake area. And then right here, you can see where Kirkwood is, and then where that fire perimeter was. So this map, as of 9 hours ago, still shows some distance there, but the recent hotspots look like that fire is starting to push closer to the Kirkwood area. Now, when it comes to the containment, not a big surprise there. It's remained relatively the same since yesterday. And the reason for that is right now they're really just focused on structure protection and getting everybody out to safety. So you can't focus as much on strategy and creating containment lines right now, or at least the last update I listened to, they were saying that the big priority right now is just protecting structures and getting people to safety. Now, I think if you haven't heard anything else that I've said, if you're just tuning into the live stream, the number one thing that you should know is all these new evacuation warnings and orders. There's so many that I can't possibly all go through them, so the easier way to do it is just to show the map. Anywhere where you see that yellow color, that's where there's an evacuation warning. So that's where you should start to get ready to leave just in case the fire moves into that area. But that red color is where there is a mandatory evacuation order, which means it's no longer time to get ready. Now is the time to just get out and get to safety. So one other thing that I will mention briefly is right there, it's showing 472 structures destroyed as the updated number for the Caldor Fire. But you notice when you look at the damage assessment map, we're not seeing any of those structures that we know were where there was a large amount of structures burned yesterday in that northeastern section there. once those damage assessment teams start to come back, we will start to see some of that information come back there. But I did just want to show this map so that you know it is a resource that you can go to in the future once those damage assessment teams do come back from that northeastern section of the fire, where if there was some buffering, looks like it reconnected. Apologies if it cut out there for a second. What I was basically saying is this damage assessment map, you can go into it, you can actually click on the structures themselves, and then if you click on the structure, there's usually a photo as well, and you can actually see what the structure itself looks like. You can find the link for that in the description below, but again, it's not as much use to the northeastern section yet because those damage assessment teams haven't been able to come back with that information yet. Now, one thing that is, I would say, the good news on this fire is we do have a very large amount of resources. You can see 25 helicopters, 3,684 personnel, 77 dozers, 353 engines. So lots of resources on this fire that, like I said, right now I don't think they're focusing as much on increasing containment. Right now, a lot of those resources, I would imagine, are just completely focused on structure protection and protecting lives as well. Now, if we look at the fire weather forecast, I think this basically summarizes why this is such a critical situation going on right now. One thing to think about again is, I'm going to turn those hotspots off because sometimes those are a little deceiving because they're not always accurate. So again, that shows the fire perimeter, and those hotspots shown with the stars, the orange dots show where the structures are. So the last thing we'd want to see is southwesterly winds. And if we look at the fire weather forecast, unfortunately, that's exactly what we are seeing right now. So looking at this, you can see Friday, Saturday, where we had those calmer conditions, we had a nice little high pressure system over us. But starting really yesterday evening and then now picking up this afternoon and going to be even stronger on Tuesday, we have that low moving through the Pacific Northwest, which is bringing some gustier winds to Northern California. You can see what they are right now. We have those southwesterly winds at about 35 miles per hour right now. So when you think about that, those winds have the ability to pick up some burning embers, toss them out ahead of the fire, create little spot fires. And as I said, we were already seeing some updates where that was already happening. So we'll have to stay tuned with all those updates throughout the course of this live stream. But just also looking at the temperature, we do have some warm conditions out there, about mid 70s where we're in the higher elevations, but into the 80s and possibly even 90s on other parts of the fire. But the even bigger factor than temperature is how dry the areas. You can see in the low teens to single digits. So because of all that critical fire weather going on, both today and as we get into tomorrow, I'll just give a quick sneak peek of the winds tomorrow afternoon, actually expected to be stronger than they are today, and unfortunately from that southwest direction again. Because of that, we do have a red flag warning over the entire Caldor Fire, which again just means there's the easier potential for those spot fires to start and the potential for rapid rate of spread of new and existing fires. Big reason for that, it's windy and dry. So I believe there's going to be a Cal Fire update starting in about a minute. So I want to make sure that we don't miss that. Let's see. So it hasn't officially started yet, but this should be starting in about a minute. So we are going to keep our eyes on that in a second. One thing that I can just started. So what I'll do is I will stay tuned. I will be in the live chat and try to answer any questions. And then once this is finished, I will come back and we'll continue looking for all the most recent information on the Caldor Fire and then looking at the fire weather forecast as well.
Coming to you live on Facebook and Zoom. The format of the meeting is going to consist of an informational update, an operational update, and then some questions and answers and closing comments from our incident commanders. And at the end, we're going to do a condensed version of this in Spanish. En español después de esta cita. Right now, the incident is at 177,260 acres in size, 14% containment, and 3,684 firefighters personnel fighting this fight. So just as a reminder, we get our informational updates, or we send them out at least consistently 2 times a day, at 7 a.m., at 7 p.m. They go out on our incident update sheets like this. Additionally, there's also a QR code that we paste everywhere. On that QR code, if you take your phone and you scan it, you can populate a tree link. And on that tree link, there's 16 different links that will give you anything and everything about this incident that you need to know. Additionally, we have also public information officers that are answering the phone. That phone number is 530-303-2455. Right now, we're going to get an informational update from our Operations Section Chief.
Good afternoon, folks. Cody Bogan, Operations Section Chief, Cal Fire Incident Management Team 6. I'm going to give you a little overview of what's going on in the fire the last 24 hours. So today, we had a very successful day throughout Division Alpha. Into Delta. Alpha still tactical patrol. We're still finding hot spots in behind the structures, and they're continuing to mop those up and get that up and try to get the residents in the area ready for repopulation.
One second. I believe this is buffering just because of their Facebook link. It does that from time to time, but I'm going to close out Alert Wildfire and Windy and the Warfast fire model just to make sure we're going as fast as possible here.
As we come around into Division Delta here, on the bottom side of Delta, right by the division break, was an area earlier today that I was speaking of that we still had some open line. The crews were very successful today. They were able to get line in. Delta now has line all the way around it. Now we just have to progress in it and get it mopped up and get it secured. We come around into Sly Park and up through the lake. All this is looking real good all the way up into the Highway 50 corridor. No real issues at all to report of as of today, and things are looking real all the way up as we get into Highway 50. Oh, the river drainage all up through there. Troops are tactical patrol and working on just getting that depth, securing the trees, fallen snags, and just trying to get that whole area, Highway 50, secure. Up into the Division H and the Branch 10 Division 8 is an item. Things looking same thing. They're working on depth up in there, mopping up, patrolling, and just that whole area secure. We get up towards the branch break up into Strawberry, the area all through Strawberry. They were in a firefight there probably 24, 36 hours ago. Everything through Strawberry's looking a lot better now. They're continuing to mop up around structure and just trying to secure things. As you push on up the 50 corridor up it, the Echo Lake into that country, they're currently in a firefight up there. They've been working. It's been a rough, long for the troops up there today, but they have been decently successful. Luckily, the fuel's kind of run out, and it kind of slowed the fire progression down up on that north piece. Though air's been clear earlier in the day, they're able to work some aircraft into there, which obviously helped out. And they just continue to chase spot fires and bump and run with the structures up the country. As we come back down the other side, down in through Kilo, the Highway 88, Highway 88 corridor got hit pretty hard today. The fire has impacted Highway 88. It has crossed over Highway 88, and we have a fire that is that's pushing up towards the Kirkwood area. It is in the kind of the dog leg and Highway 88, which I know some folks that are watching this can relate to this. It is in that dog between Highway 88 corridor right now. The troops are working on it. We got equipment and dozers in there trying to cut that off and get it tamed back into the north side of Highway 88. As we get in back behind that area on 88 on Division Mike, November, and all through the backside of Branch 20 and into Branch 30, things are looking real good through there. It's been a success through that area. Tactical patrol, and they continue to mop up and patrol all through that country there. With that, to be in the report.
Good evening, Eric Lee, Law Enforcement Liaison Team. So I'm going to describe kind of what we did today, some of the actions we took, and then I'm going to go through some of the questions that have already been given. So looking over here at the map, we put South Lake Tahoe in a mandatory evacuation this morning, working diligently with the County Sheriff's Department. Excuse me, Sheriff's Office, we were able to work to kind of a tiered effect where we put in the evacuation orders, so we did separated by a little bit of time to give folks time, so we didn't put so much pressure on the highways, freeways. Coming around here, as we did that, we did have to put some another zone in Alpine County into a warning. Again, that's our standard practice. We tried to do that. I've also been in contact with the side about what their area looks like and all that, and we're working on that now, just taking a look at it to make some decisions later on. Fire reached their decision point yet, but we're just looking at it. Back over here on the west side, I do have some good news that we were able.
All right, I'm gonna try something here real quick. I think the reason it keeps buffering is a Facebook thing. So what we are going to do is actually just try to stream it from somewhere else. Hopefully we don't miss anything too important in the 10 seconds it'll take me to pull this back up. But that was, yeah, there's a link right there. So hopefully this one's buffering less. Again, sorry about that. And I'll be able to go back over anything we might have just missed.
And burn a lot easier. And then the last question I have, and I kind of addressed it earlier, but status of Strawberry. So I believe it's been probably 36 hours ago now, maybe pushing 48 hours ago. The fire pushed up through Strawberry pretty hard when it spotted across Highway 50 from the north side. That night and early into that next day, the troops were in a pretty good firefight all through that country in structured defense. As of right now, there's been no structure loss in the Strawberry area that we are aware of. It has been real hot out there, and we haven't got all of our DINS folks in looking at everything, but as of right now, there is no known structure loss through the Strawberry area. And with that, that's all the questions I currently have.
Good evening, Dusty, one of the Unified Incident Commanders. So we do have a couple of questions, and then I'll go into kind of the closing comments for the night. There's been a lot of questions about structure loss as this fire has moved, and I want you to know that we do have multiple damage inspection teams that are out. They're evaluating that for us, and as soon as we can get some good, solid, concrete information, we will get that to you. One of the things I want to talk about tonight is there's been a There's multiple questions, a lot of focus on a lot of different areas, and there's a lot of focus of what's going on up in the Tahoe Basin area. And we are having a press conference following this meeting that's going to address that. But I do want to make sure that each and every one of our communities that surround this entire fire here know that we have not lost sight of that. We have resources in each and every one of those communities. We have firefighters working tirelessly every day to continue to bring mitigation and add more black line to that. Lots of questions about Pollock Pines, and our law enforcement liaison answered that. Once we get through the wind event and we can get some of that fire buttoned up here in the next couple of days, our folks are going to start looking at that Pollock Pines Camino area. As I've said in the days prior, it is one of our number one priorities to get the citizens back into their communities as soon as safe as possible. We still have to make sure it's safe before we put you back into the community, and we don't want to allow folks into the community and then have them leave again. So we are going through those checkpoints. Some of the changes that you are going to see here in the next coming days, you're going to see the California National Guard. California National Guard is going to be managing traffic control points to help protect and provides our CHP and our El Dorado County Sheriff's Department to free up some of their resources holding those traffic control points, and then to better serve the community and be a bigger presence. There's been a lot going on in the last couple of days, and we've got a lot more going on in the days coming. This firefight is still far from done, but I do want you to know that CAL FIRE, the United States Forest Service, stand together to bring this incident to mitigation. Thank you, and have a great night.
Thank you, Dusty. Okay, just want to make some clarification for something our operations section chief talked about. So Homewood is on the west shore, not east shore, just for clarification. We know that. It's a lot going on, so we just want to make sure we clarify that for all the viewers out there. And there's some questions about structures. We continue to have 20,414 structures that are a remaining threat at this point right now. So our ask is that everyone that wants to know information about the structures, evacuation zones, go to that link tree and look under the evacuation map that's provided by our law enforcement partners to give you a very good perspective of that information. Okay, at this time, we're going to go ahead and conduct this community meeting in Spanish, en español.
Alrighty, so we are back here. Sorry again for the lagging early on. I think I'll just stream it from YouTube again in the future. I think there's something about how Facebook streams video that makes it a lot more laggy. But there were some key things that they said throughout that update, so we can just go over. I think what is the number one thing that I should show first more than anything, if you did miss it in that live stream, was the recent evacuation map. And I think that's the number one thing to think about right now. Basically all of South Lake Tahoe at this point is in that mandatory evacuation order. That means that if you live in that area, it's no longer time to get ready. Now is the time to actually just immediately leave from that area. Now, one other thing that they were talking about was where they were seeing some spot fires coming over Highway 80, or 88. So that was interesting there. You can see where Highway 88 is, and it sounded like they were seeing some spot fires coming over that right there. So that was something that, I'm not sure why the map keeps doing that, but that was something that we were seeing. I was seeing in updates on Twitter as well that there were some spot fires right there. So I believe there's a camera that we can look at for the Kirkwood area that would be interesting to see exactly what it looks like in that area that they were talking about seeing a push towards Creekwood. So if we come here to alertwildfire.com, I believe it's the Sierra cam that's pretty near. So you can see the Heavenly ski area, very smoky in that spot right there. We might have to look at that camera in a second. But first, I do just want to find that Sierra one. This is one that we were looking at yesterday, and at one point yesterday we could actually see some flames on this cam. So this one right here, let's go 3 hours and see what it's been doing over the last 3 hours. Then, just in case you're new to the live stream, I'll once again go over all the most important updates and that fire weather forecast that is really the reason that we're having such a critical situation right now. So, looks like this cam is actually farther up north. It's not the one that I was exactly looking for, but I'd say it's still an interesting camera to look at. If you turn on the hybrid map there, you can see exactly where it is. So sometimes this camera does turn around and look more at the Kirkwood area, but looks like it's looking more to the east right now. You can see what appears to be some ski lifts in that area. Just trying to zoom in. So this is where the Sierra Tahoe Resort is right. Basically, it seems like the camera is right within that Sierra Tahoe Resort. So this is the camera we were looking at yesterday. And late last night, we were actually even seeing some flames on this imagery. But overall, just seeing a lot of smoke on that imagery right there. But I think before we really start diving into a bunch of different cameras, I should just once again reiterate the key threat as of right now is obviously the Caldor Fire is the one that we're going to be looking at throughout the course of this video. That pink color there represents the red flag warning, which is one of the reasons we're seeing such an increase in activity on the Caldor Fire right now. To really illustrate that, you can look at the satellite imagery where early this morning we already had a large amount of activity. I did a more concise update at about 9 a.m. this morning, and even at 9 a.m. we were seeing a large smoke plume coming off of it. Big reason for that was we had a lot of activity yesterday, and then it was very dry overnight, so that activity was able to just continue into the morning hours. And then as we got into this afternoon, that's where we transitioned into the very dry conditions with relative humidity in the low teens to single digits, and then those wind gusts as well. So that red flag warning I just showed, the reason for that, not sure why my windy map always takes us down to the Gulf down there, but looking at Tahoe, the number one thing that we want to look at is winds and relative humidity. So we'll actually look at relative humidity first, because that was something that we also had yesterday. You can see where South Lake Tahoe is up here. Yesterday we had very dry conditions, and today once again we have those dry conditions. So in that regard, we're very similar to the conditions we had yesterday that caused all that growth in the fire that we saw yesterday, all the new evacuation orders that were popping up. What makes this forecast, I think, even more challenging is that today the winds are about 10 miles per hour stronger. You can see we have some gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Later in this video, we can actually go into some observation stations and actually look exactly what kind of winds we're seeing in these areas. But that, again, is the big reason we're concerned. Not only because of the wind's magnitude, but even more importantly, because of the direction those winds are coming from. You notice they're coming from the southwest. So the reason that's concerning is, if you look at the Caldor Fire here, just to get your bearings again, there's Lake Tahoe, there's the Caldor Fire that you see in that yellow shading. The red dots are where a lot of those active hotspots are, and it looks like they actually just maybe remapped a new perimeter onto this one since we looked at this just like 20 minutes ago. It looks like this is either new or it's a glitch, but yeah, looks like they've extended that fire perimeter since the last time that we were looking at it. So the reason that we're so concerned right now is when you have those 35 mile per hour wind gusts, it's going to take these hotspots, or it's going to take, it already is taking those, and it's pushing them farther to the northeast. The reason that's such a concern, and I feel like those are actually just offset right now. I think that should be on top of that part of the fire perimeter, and that should be right there. Not sure why that's not working, so we'll just go to the live hotspot imagery. Again, you can always take this with a grain of salt. We've seen in the past that these hotspots can be off by as much as 1 or 2 miles, and it doesn't mean everything underneath here is burning, but it does show relatively where the satellite imagery is picking up heat. One way to look at that is we can actually look at the heat itself from the satellite imagery, and then I think that other map uses some kind of complex software to take those hotspots that you see right there and put it on the other map. But This is actually the first time I've looked at this, and this makes it look more concerning than some of the other maps we're looking like. Looks like that northern section has really flared up in the last hour, much more than the last time that I had looked at this map. So I believe they match up where those hotspots are to try to put it onto this map, but again, that doesn't mean everything in that area has been burnt out, but I do still like to show this map because it's the one map where we can actually turn on the structures, where you see those orange dots there, and that really paints the picture for why we're so concerned about the Caldor Fire right now. Two big areas that I'm concerned about. One is the Kirkwood area. You can see it's that batch of structures right there. Not saying that the hotspots have actually reached this far and that close to Kirkwood. Again, we'll have to look for some recent information to see exactly what's going on the ground right there. According to that, it would be maybe 1 mile to 2 miles away, but the hotspots themselves might be 1 mile or 2 off, so hard to exactly say what's going on right there. But the other big concern is on this northeastern section, where you can see there's even a larger amount of structures, and when you tie that hotspot together with these winds that we're seeing, that will continue to try to push this fire farther to the northeast over the next couple of hours. That's why we're doing such an extended forecast today, so that we can just continue to follow this fire as it's happening in real time. I know one of the main reasons that I do these update videos is because I know how hard it is to find recent information on all the different fires. There's maybe 50 different sources, like the 50 tabs that I have open right now, and basically what I try to do in these videos is collect all of that information and then kind of make it more concise and kind of skim off the top of what I think is the most important things to know. So most important things to know, I think, is where those key structures are in the Kirkwood area and this whole area around South Lake Tahoe. The fact that we still have those southwesterly wind gusts that are going to try to push this fire to the northeast. But the most important thing to know about is the fact that the evacuation orders have been extended. Basically, all of South Lake Tahoe at this point is in that mandatory evacuation order. So if you are in that area, now is the time to get out. That red color means it's mandatory. That yellow color means that now would be the time to start getting ready to leave. So one thing, actually, before I'll show the, actually, I'll just show it right now because I haven't actually showed this before. Big thank you to Neil LaRoe for what we're about to look at here. It's one of the most useful tools that you can use to figure out exactly where this fire is, what structures are threatened. So again, Neil LaRoe is one of the top wildfire researchers in the entire world. He posts some great updates on the Caldor Fire and other fires that are going on. So strongly suggest that you follow Neil LaRoe on Twitter. Very useful tool to get recent information. And I bring that up because he showed me how to access this data this morning. And what I wanted to show is, so this is Google Earth. So what we're actually going to be able to do here is zoom into the areas and see exactly what kind of, how far the fire perimeter has extended compared to where some of those communities are. So again, we're only as good as the most recent data. So the data that we're going to be using, I believe, came from 4 p.m. this afternoon. So it's fairly recent, the one that we're about to look at in a second. But first, I just wanted to show where that fire perimeter was on the 28th. So just to get your bearings again, there's Lake Tahoe. There's a lot of the structures. If we want to find where Kirkwood is, it's right about there. And that's what the fire perimeter looked like on the 28th. So at this point in time, the winds were still relatively calm. We had that very thick smoke inversion over us. Fire behavior had been active for maybe Thursday, Friday, Saturday, but it wasn't anything extreme. And then yesterday, things really started to change yesterday afternoon as relative humidity dropped down into the single digits. We started to see a bit of an increase in winds as well. And I think I want to get directly centered over it so you can see how much the fire grew between the 28th and as of right now. So again, that red line right there is the fire perimeter on the 28th. Now I'm about to click on the 30th and you'll be able to see how much it grew. So you can see exactly where that large extension of fire was in the last 48 hours. The key spots that we were following, one, that western section there where we did see some hot spots, but most importantly that northeastern section and that more southeastern section that's pushing in towards more the Kirkwood area. So now what I want to do is just keep on the most recent one and actually come in here and see if we can. So this is Highway 88. So it's this arm of the fire right here. That's more southeastern section. We might be switching our bearings around here for a second, but the key thing that I want to update you on this section that we heard in the Cal Fire update, and I also was seeing some reports from on Twitter, is that here you see Highway 88, and I was seeing some reports that this part of the fire was starting to spot over Highway 88, and it was now established on both sides of Highway 88 right there. Again, a spot fire is where you have burning embers right here. You think about those southwesterly winds that we have. It picks up the burning ember, throws it over Highway 88, and then a lot of these fuels in here are critically dry with fuel moistures at some of the lowest levels that we've ever recorded, so that leads to some new spot fires. Actually, I think you can see an example of one of these spot fires right about there. So you can imagine burning ember was picked up right here, dropped into what looks to be a very woody area right there, and then once it's established in those dry fuels, it can then start moving up that hill right there. So this is going to be a map that we're going to be able to use throughout the course of this video. Every time that the satellite information is updated, I'll bring the new data into this map, and we'll be able to actually track exactly where that fire perimeter is compared to where some of our key cities are. So now let's just zoom back out, get our bearings again, make sure that we're pointed the right direction, Lake Tahoe up there. Now I want to zoom in to, we'll look at the Strawberry area. So again, you can see why this is a key area of the fire. Just zooming out, it does look like there's a sliver in between these two fingers of the fire that hasn't actually burnt yet. So you can see where it extends out here. I wish that this map was shaded, but unfortunately it's not. But right there you see that finger extending out that way. You have that finger extending out that way. What I would say is actually some good news, and again, this isn't real-time fire perimeter, but it was from this afternoon, so it's almost real-time. Directly in the Strawberry area, Twin Bridges, it doesn't look like the entire fire perimeter has extended over those areas yet. Now, with that being said, we were seeing reports and videos of the fire in those communities and active structure protection going on, but I would say it's at least good not to see that those main cities are within the fire perimeter itself at this point. Now, that's where there is possibly some concern for the Phillips area. It looks like that is one city where it is within this fire perimeter, but even with that, a key thing to know about these fire perimeter maps is it doesn't mean that everything within there has burned, and especially when there's communities, that means that they often go into the communities and really just focus on structure protection. So it might look like the fire perimeter is completely around an area, but they might have successfully defended some structures. But we did see, if you were looking on Twitter, we did see a large amount of videos of structures burning, and those damage assessment teams haven't come back yet with that information, but there certainly have been some structures destroyed based on that increase in fire activity that we saw between the 28th and as of right now. So again, just looking at it from a closer angle, that's what it looked like on the 28th. That's what it looks like right now. So you can see where it's been extending a rather large amount in the last couple days. I measured it this morning, and it said about 5 to 7 miles of that growth since yesterday, or since yesterday morning, but I didn't actually hear an updated number in that CAL FIRE update for the official growth on that fire. So now we can take a look at Echo Lake, and I want to make sure that north is pointed right, is correct here. So looks like that is directly north. Just to zoom out again so you see what we're looking at. Lake Tahoe up here, that's that northeastern section of the fire that we're so interested in. And then it looks like that's about as far north as the fire had extended according to this fire perimeter imagery. You can see Echo Lake right here, and this looks like it's some evidence of some of that spot fire activity that we were seeing in some of those other reports where the burning embers are picked up by the winds, then they are dropped down here, and it starts those little fires in these areas. And then when you actually zoom in and look at the topography, that's one of the reasons that spot fires can lead to such rapid spread, is because the winds might drop the spot fire down here, but fires like to move uphill, so then it starts actually moving back up to the fire, and you end up getting faster fire spread than if the fire itself had just had to move on the ground the entire time. But that is definitely an area that we're going to have to keep an eye on as we move forward. And the other reason that it is so, again, big thank you to Neil LaRoe for showing me how to access this data, because one of the key factors that plays into how fast a fire is going to move is the topography. So it is very useful to be able to actually see what the topography is in this area. For example, in the Strawberry area, when we were just looking at it from the other maps, you can't really get that good of an idea of what kind of situation you're in, but you can see that it appears to be directly in a canyon. So the reason that's so concerning is in a canyon like that, the winds are funneled. How I always think of that is if you have a hose that's spraying water and you put your thumb over the end of it, the water comes out a lot faster. So that's the same thing that happens with winds. When they're squeezed into a canyon, they pick up, and then that's able to not only move the fire forward faster, but then it also can lead to those spot fires that we've been looking at as well. So as of right now, I think this is going to be the main source that I use to look at the fire perimeter from now on, because it is very useful to be able to see exactly where some of our areas are, like Kirkwood, where that Highway 88 is, where the fire perimeter has extended to this point. And then I believe once we get the updated information, we're actually going to be able to see some spot fires dropping in right about here. It looks like there's one example of it, but I was reading a number of reports of spot fires going over Highway 88. So I imagine the next time we update this map, we're going to see more activity in that area. And unfortunately, we're most likely going to see that fire starting to push farther towards the north and northeast as well. Now, one thing that I will say is that if we look at where it was able to grow so rapidly yesterday, so to see where it grew yesterday, we can go back to the 28th and then go to the 30th. You can see most of the growth was in this stretch right here. So if we actually want to zoom in there and look at some of that topography that we have, you can see that it looked like we maybe had a large number of spot fires that started, and then once you get just one spot fire in the center of this, what almost looks to be a canyon right here, then it can start growing up both sides of this canyon. And that's also what I was saying earlier, when you have two hills like that, it really starts to funnel your winds. So I believe that's one of the big reasons that we saw such a large amount of growth in that area right there. But with that being said, what I'm actually hoping for, again, I'm still kind of learning how to move around in this Google Earth environment, but one thing that may actually work in our favor, or at least I'm hoping will work in our favor, is that from where the fire is right now, it looks like it has to move downhill throughout the next couple of hours before it continues to move any farther forward. So that would actually benefit our firefighters if they're trying to stop this fire perimeter right somewhere along here is because fires move much slower downhill than they do uphill. So that would start working in our favor. The main reason for that is because when a fire is going uphill, you can imagine that it's able to preheat the fuels above it as those flames are tilting into the fuels, and then by the time the flames touch those fuels, they're already preheated, and then it just takes off uphill. But the exact opposite happens if you're looking at a fire trying to move downhill. You can imagine a lot of these flames right here would be extending up this way, so a lot of these fuels aren't actually feeling the heat, so it'll just be backing down this hill instead of just flying up it like we see on when a fire is moving uphill. So that might be the one piece of good news that we have in this area. It does look like it has to move downhill, but with that being said, we have some very strong winds right now, and all it really takes is a spot fire to start right here, and then it moves uphill. Then another spot fire starts here, then it moves uphill. So we are certainly going to keep a very close eye on that as we move forward. And we'll just get back oriented. So we're looking at north again. That again is exactly where the fire perimeter is as of right now. So I will look, sorry if anybody's been asking questions in the live chat. I'm basically impossible to try to navigate through this Google Earth environment and read a live chat at the same time. So I will just briefly look through the live chat, and in the meantime I will leave this map up because I think that is the number one most important piece of information that people can have right now, that the entire south shore of Lake Tahoe is now under a mandatory evacuation order. And you can minimize the chat. There should be a hide chat button at the bottom. So Silver Lake. So again, apologies if people have been posting a large amount of questions in the live chat. This is the first time I've looked at it in about 10 to 15 minutes. Oh, I also see the word troll popping up. So good to see that I'm seeing some of those. Lucy and Trish, our moderators, hopefully doing some great work there, keeping the trolls out. So this is the other great thing about this new Google Earth. So Silver Lake, California. Let's see where it was in regards to the most recent fire perimeter. And I do not have that fire perimeter, unfortunately. I can try to get that later, but again, apologies also if people are interested in some of the other fires that are going on. I'll try to mention them throughout this video, but I think so let's see. I can actually just give one very quick update of the other fires that are going on, and then we'll take a look back at the Caldor Fire, because I actually am interested to see some of the new incidents that we have as well. Looks like Dixie Fire, that one's up to 770,000 acres. French Fire, 25,000. Chaparral is 1,400. Monument 164. And just looking at Northern California, we'll go back to, actually we'll look at this one first now that it's loaded. It does look like the Dixie Fire does have a fair bit of activity on that northeastern section right there. So tell Holt it is very near Kirkwood. So that is, I think, goes along with something that we were hearing in that Cal Fire update, was that they're saying that there was some spot fires moving that part of the fire perimeter over Highway 80, moving it closer towards Kirkwood. So that's certainly going to be an area that we continue to follow throughout the entire course of this live stream, and I'll certainly fire perimeter data when we can have it. In the meantime, the best resource that we can use is the CalTopo current hotspots. I sometimes don't even like to show this map because we've seen in the past that it's not exactly accurate, but that does paint the picture that from where that most previous fire perimeter was, zooming into the Kirkwood area, that's where the fire perimeter was. Looking at the current hotspots, it does look like it's continued to move farther towards the east and the northeast. So that is the reason that that is one of our top priorities right now. And also on that northeastern section as well. So what I would be interested in is if we possibly have some cameras in the Kirkwood area. If anyone knows if there's a camera in the Kirkwood area, let me know in the live chat, and I'll try to keep an eye on any suggestions that are popping up in the live chat. But you can see how much smoke is on the Heavenly cam right there. Leak Springs, that was the one we were looking at earlier where you could actually see the smoke plume itself. It looked like it was maybe about 200 to 300 yards away from the camera. So that's going to be one that we have to keep an eye on throughout the next couple of hours, because the camera itself might be at risk right there. But I wonder, I think there's a better way to do this. So let's just pick one of the cameras that we know is in the Caldor Fire area. We know this one is in the Caldor Fire area. Sierra at Tahoe. We'll zoom in. We'll mostly just look at this map, because I want to see if there's a camera that looks at Kirkwood. So Kirkwood looks to be right in the middle of 3 different cameras. That one looks like it's looking up towards Twin Bridges right now, and we looked at that camera, we couldn't actually see all that much happening. This one looks... oh, that's the Leak Springs. So that one's facing Kirkwood, but it's not exact. There's such a large smoke plume right in front of that camera that we can't actually see what's going on there. And then that one looks to be pointed more towards the northeast as well. So we are going to continue to try to look at these. Well, hopefully that one turns around and looks more at the Kirkwood area, because that is a big concern that we have right now. But just looking at what that camera has looked like over the last hour, you can see that there is a large amount of smoke being produced right there. And I will check out the Hawkins link as well. The Leak Springs one was actually, I'll show both of those. So Leak Springs, this might be the camera to watch over the next couple of hours, because you can see that it actually looks like the camera itself might be threatened. Although I will say that around the camera area, it looks like there's a lot less fuel. You can see that where that fire appears to be most actively burning, it looks like there's a lot of fuel, lots of trees right there. In some of those cases, it looks like there's some dead trees as well, most likely due to bark beetles or disease or the drought itself. At about 85. Oh, I see somebody said Kirkwood. Did I accidentally say Kirkland again? I noticed that I accidentally said Kirkland in that first update video this morning. Again, apologies for that. I think that was maybe a Freudian slip, because I know I need to go grocery shopping. But just looking at the Leak Springs camera, this is certainly one that we're going to have to watch over the next couple of hours, because you can see a large amount of activity going off right there. Based on the way that smoke is moving, it looks like we're looking almost to the north at this northeast at that point. Yeah, because the smoke is moving directly away from the camera. So that's another way to tell you that those southwest winds are pushing that fire farther towards the northeast. One other way to look at that is the satellite imagery, where if we go in here, we can look at where you can see how much the Caldor Fire has picked up. It's unfortunate to see that it almost looks like there's going to be a pyrocumulus cloud popping up on this northeastern section pretty soon here. We saw it start to pop up at about this time yesterday, but you also notice what direction that smoke is moving. That's one of the first things that I always look at, because it tells you what direction the winds are going. I was trying to read the live chat. So I believe YouTube doesn't allow you to post links if you're trying to post a link to a video. Probably for good reason, because for whatever reason trolls love commenting on YouTube. But a good way to reach me if you do have a link or a suggestion or anything like that is on Twitter, where you can send me a link and then I'll be able to pull it up right from here, and then we could all look at the link together. You can find me on Twitter at Holt Hanley Weather. And again, Neil LaRoe, that's a great account to follow. He is the one who introduced me to that Google Earth imagery. So big shout out to him, and I would strongly suggest you follow him because he had lots of posts like this where he's one of the top wildfire researchers in the entire world. So you get the very scientific information about what's going on the Caldor Fire if you do follow his account. So it says big uptick on the radar just south of Myers just now. So one thing we can do, go back to Google Earth, because again, sorry for not keeping up with the live chat too well. I imagine some people were mentioning Myers because when I looked back at this morning's live chat, that was a place that a lot of people had commented on. Again, apologies for not looking at the live chat very much in this morning, or at all in this morning's update. I just wanted that to be a concise video where people could get the most important information in a more concise format. But there's Myers right there. There was the most recent fire perimeter data. I believe I got that from 4 p.m. this afternoon. But just seeing the satellite imagery, you can see that there has been a lot of activity in the last hour and 45 minutes. So I'm certainly going to be looking to see if we can get the updated fire perimeter map throughout the course of this video. But just tying that all together, you can see smoke moving to the northeast. That means the fire is moving towards the northeast. Neil LaRoe on Twitter was saying big uptick on the radar just south. Where'd he go? Just south of Myers. So, zooming in there. And one thing I also noticed is big uptick on the radar over the Kirkwood area as well. Again, I'm thinking about how to interpret this, because just based on that one south of Myers, it looks like that was maybe the fire itself generating a smoke plume right there. But it's also hard to tell if it's maybe smoke that was generated somewhere else moving into that area. And I see Andrew just posted a super chat. Also, huge thank you to everybody who has posted super chats so far. It's very much appreciated. And I see fellow SJSU meteorology alumni here, class of 2009. So, fellow Spartan, love it. Dr. Craig Clements is a buddy and ex-professor of mine. Let me know if you want to chat /collab. Definitely will. Yeah, Dr. Craig Clements is the man. That is another great account to follow on Twitter. Dr. Craig Clements runs the Fire Weather Research Laboratory Twitter. And this is another place where you can find a lot of great information on wildfires. So flames from a backfire are visible as winds pick up near Echo Summit Lake at the head of the Caldor Fire. So I just want to zoom in and look at this. So he said this was near Echo Summit. Certainly seeing some flames going on right there. Wind beginning to materialize on the southwest facing slopes of Echo Summit on the Caldor Fire above Twin Bridges at Highway 50 as red flag warning goes into effect. So that's 2 posts now that we've seen about Echo Summit. So what we can actually do, I believe there's an infrared camera that looks at Echo Summit. So we'll go Caldor Fire infrared. And we'll see what this looks like. Yeah, so I think it's the camera on the left there that's looking at Echo Summit, and just zooming into that one, I believe that those are flames where you see the brighter color there. It's, again, pretty hard to see on this imagery, but I believe that that is Echo Summit, and those are the flames that have started to move down the ridgeline. When we were looking at this camera yesterday, we were seeing the flames directly on top of the ridgeline, and now it does look like those are starting to find their way down. You also notice what we were talking about earlier with the effect of spot fires, where you can imagine you have the flames right here, the winds might be picking up some embers, dropping them down here, and then starting those little spot fires, and then those are then able to grow uphill and lead to much more rapid fire spread. So that right there is the wider view of what I believe is Echo Summit. I almost wish they'd stop rotating it so we could get our bearings on it, but certainly looks like we're seeing some flames coming down Echo Summit right now. So I want to see how that relates to where the previous fire perimeter was, because that fire perimeter should be in this data, because this data was from this afternoon and we were seeing those flames on Echo Summit yesterday. So let's try to look at it this way. So I believe what we're looking at there is the camera almost looks like it's looking directly at it like this, because yesterday we were seeing those flames directly on the ridge line. This is actually a perfect way to match up those two things that we're looking at. I'll close that so we can see it a bit better. So zooming in there, that was the most recent fire perimeter data that we have. You can see where that ridgeline is, where it shows Echo Summit right there, and then we can almost match that up with the other map that we're looking at right here. I believe that's that activity that was previously that fire perimeter that has continued to grow over the last couple of hours, and I was looking at this earlier today. I was planning on showing this image in this morning's update, but this morning there actually wasn't that much activity going on. It certainly looked like there was still some heat and some flames, but definitely looks like it has picked up now. And I almost think that perfectly matches up what we're looking at. Big part of the fire perimeter there. Of course, it pans away right as I wanted to point something out. And then it almost looked like there was two hot spots and then another part of the fire perimeter. And it almost looks like that matches up with that activity right there. Maybe see some new spot fires popping up right there, at least if we do have this matched up correctly. And then that other part of the fire perimeter right there. And then just another example of some of those spot fires that you get. The winds pick it up, drop it down right here, and then it starts moving back uphill. So definitely going to be interested in updating that fire perimeter map whenever we can. Actually, I'll check right now. They do those flights pretty often. I hope that I saved the link. So let's go to Safari. Right now we're going to try to find the most recent fire perimeter data, or even see if there is new fire perimeter data. And I have the most recent one. So the one we're looking at is the most recent fire perimeter data, but I will continue to check back there as we move forward, because that is one of the best ways to figure out exactly where this fire is. Now, one thing that I will say though is there is big wind coming up in LPD mobile cam. So if you could possibly send me the link to that LPB mobile cam on Twitter, I would love to pull that up. Not sure if that's on Alert Wildfire or another website, but I would definitely like to get some eyes on the ground in the Myers area, because there you see Myers right there. You can see where that fire perimeter was yesterday, but the main thing that we're concerned about is just looking at north. The winds right now are coming from the southwest, and they've picked up from what they were yesterday, so it's taking some of these burning embers, and we've seen some reports of spot fires, and also tying that into Neil LaRoe's tweet where it did look like there was a big uptick on the radar just south of Myers. What I'm hoping is that doesn't mean that a spot fire dropped down just south of Myers and has picked up in activity ever since then. What I'm hoping is maybe that's just smoke that drifted in from the satellite imagery. But given the winds, given where that previous fire perimeter was, I definitely wouldn't rule out the possibility that some spot fires have been happening. And we did actually hear that on the Cal Fire update as well. So sounds like, yeah, I'm trying my best to stay updated with the chat and these maps right now. So a couple interesting things to look at here. Let's go Greater Tahoe region. I think that camera we wanted to look... Oh, we never ended up looking at Hawkins Peak. That was another camera that somebody mentioned. So we'll try to take a look at that in a second. Oh, this is the one that somebody had mentioned in the camera. So I think they were saying it was showing a wind shift. And then I also saw somebody else in the live chat say that the winds are shifting more to the south over the next couple of hours. So we can look at that on the forecast information, and then we can also look at that on the Wharf S fire simulation to see if the Wharf S fire simulation is picking up that wind shift as well. So actually, before we really look at this, and again, thank you, Gina, very much for the super chat, and no thank you necessary. I'm a California citizen who's concerned about these wildfires. I think just as much as anybody, I have friends and family with structures and who live in the Tahoe area. So, and this is one of the best ways for me to learn about wildfire, getting firsthand experience. So I'd say no thanks necessary, but thank you to you and to, not exactly sure how to say it, Penoaddle for the super chat as well. So before we look at this one, I do want to just get our bearings on exactly what we're looking at. Zooming in here, it looks like this camera is looking up towards the northeast, so it's more towards the north of Myers. It'd be nice if that camera would actually turn around and look directly at Myers. But we can see a fair bit of smoke in this area, and certainly does look like there's some stronger winds than we were seeing yesterday. You also notice a lot of dust kicking up throughout this video. What I would imagine that is perhaps them doing some structure protection around here, maybe doing some dozer lines. You see that dust kicking up in there. I would imagine that's maybe some dozers trying to get some lines around some of these structures, but again, that would just be my guess. I also want to look at so you can see Heavenly Ski Area. That might be interesting just to see what that looks like. That's looking more at the eastern area of Lake Tahoe. Oh, and it's one of those spinning cameras. We'll try the other one. And thanks again for the super chat as well. Again, I will... Oh, interesting, that LPD cam just got set up. It actually looked like at the start of that video we could see them setting up. So this is actually a better camera for what we've been trying to figure out. Looks like this one is almost on the southeastern shore of Lake Tahoe, and it's looking down into this area that we're so concerned about, and you can see how much smoke is being generated within that cone of sight in that camera right there. So certainly seeing a lot of activity going on right there. And then that is interesting what somebody just said. I was in Myers all last night. All the spots got well established. Yeah, so that was something that we were talking about was unfortunately most likely happening. Was that's where we had the fire perimeter yesterday, or actually this afternoon, the most recent flight that they did. But we were talking about how with those winds, it was going to be picking up those burning embers, dropping them down into where we have a large amount of structures, and then we were seeing a large amount of reflectivity on that radar camera from that one Twitter post just south of Myers. So it seems like there have been some spots into this area and fire activity has been picking up. We're just going to have to wait and see once the next fire perimeter information comes out, but that is definitely one of the key areas that we're looking at throughout the entire course of this video. I would say this whole stretch right here is one of my big concerns, because I would say, yeah, that is my big concern, because based on the winds, it would pick up burning embers, drop it right in here, and then once it drops the burning embers, then it can actually start burning back uphill. And then the other thing that is a challenge for this whole area right here is what we were talking about earlier, where you have a canyon like this, it just acts to funnel the winds through that canyon. So that's actually something that somebody mentioned in the chat that I'm interested to see, is they talked about the winds shifting from southwesterly to a more southerly direction, which would be let's try to get it up right here. So looks like this imagery still has it coming from the southwest. Let's see if it starts trending. It does start trending more south as we get into tonight. So by about 11 p.m. tonight, it looks like the winds will have completely shifted to the south. And then that also makes me think about looking at the Wharf S-Fire model simulation to see if that was picking up that wind shift tonight as well, moving more to the south. Again, the impacts that we'd have on that is that it would take some of these hotspots here and try to move them up to the north, which again is really either whether we have southerly or southwesterly winds. A lot of our structures are either to the north or the north in this area, but I can't officially confirm. Oh, is it buffering? Oh, okay. So I know why it's buffering. Sorry about that. So it probably has stopped. Let me know if it has stopped buffering as of right now. So hopefully that it stopped buffering. I tried to pull up the Wharf S-Fire model, and still not sure. I'm now looking at the live chat, so if anybody could confirm that it has stopped buffering. Alright, we are back. So again, the reason that happened was I tried to pull up the Wharf S-Fire model to try to look at that wind shift and the fire growth that it was forecasting, but that model takes up a lot of computing power, so I don't think I will be able to pull that back up again, because it looks like it did lead to a large amount of buffering when we just looked at that. So I will just talk about what else we're looking at right here. It is showing those hotspots in that area, but can't confirm that we actually are seeing those hotspots, but that would match up with this area right here, and does sound like some people have said in the live chat that there were some spot fires getting into this area, and because of that, I think the best place to get some recent information would be to actually go to Twitter. Again, Neil saying there again, big uptick. Although intel is spotty, this real-time radar imagery could appear to corroborate anecdotal information that at least a couple of the several spot fires below Echo Summit, east of Highway 50, and in and near Myers, Christmas Valley are becoming established and burning hot. So, while I can't officially confirm it yet, it does sound, I don't imagine that it's anywhere near as bad as this map is showing, but it does sound like exactly what we were afraid about. Yeah, and I could use a new computer. Maybe I'll save up all the super chats that I've gotten throughout this year and buy a new computer. It's probably about time. It also doesn't help that I have about 50 tabs open, though. I should probably get better at closing them if I'm not using them. And actually, I will do that. So, I think all the big ones are closed as of right now. So, basically, the big story that we've been kind of uncovering over the last 30 minutes is what we were afraid about was where the fire perimeter was. Here you see Echo Lake. We have Phillips right here. The winds are moving directly to the northeast. So what we were afraid of is some of those burning embers being picked up and dropped down into this lower elevation here and into where you see Myers and around Highway 50 as well. And just based on Twitter reports and some of the infrared imagery as well, it does sound like there have been some spot fires in this area, and it does sound like some of them have been established. So I think that's one of the big things that we're going to have to try to figure out more, try to uncover more information about as we go forward. So right here, intense fire along Highway 50 just on the Tahoe side of Echo Summit. Cabins involved, major torching, and crown fire. We can enlarge this as well just to actually see what it looks like. Oh, and that's a great reminder. Thank you for reminding me that CalTopo has the wind forecast and direction, because I think is partly because of that windy website that was making my computer buffer. So again, apologies for the buffering earlier. But yeah, I'll start saving up all my super chats and get a good gaming rig, or just a much better computer overall. Actually, the biggest problem is probably the fact that it's about 95 degrees where I'm recording this right now. I'll try to open up some windows. 1 second. I think that's actually the problem. It's too hot in here. So again, looking at this imagery, just tying that in again, it says intense fire along Highway 50, just on the Tahoe side of Echo Summit. Cabins involved, major torching, and crown fire. So we can match this up with two other of our maps that we're looking at. Yeah, it looks like it's unfortunately a very, very serious situation going on. That's why we're following it in real time. I think that just reminded me to show the most important map that we're looking at throughout this entire video. This one right here that just shows that all of South Lake Tahoe is now under a mandatory evacuation order. So if you are in that area, now is the time to get out. But we're kind of uncovering where this fire is as of right now. That map, or that video right there, shows that there is a large amount of activity going on Echo Summit as of right now. And we can tie that in with some of the other images we're looking at. So we can actually make sure we have the exact place that we want to see. And it also orients it back up towards north. So right there, that shows Echo Summit. So based on what they were saying in that video right there, it does sound like this part of the fire perimeter has continued to move farther down towards Echo Summit. And in that video, we were seeing some very steep topography. So right there, where you see that very steep topography right there, I'm sure if you're a local in this area, you might be able to actually tell exactly where this is. But there is one point in this video where it almost looks like you can see that steep topography that we're looking at right about there. You can see how steep that topography is. I think that matches up with the Google Earth image that we're looking at as of right now. And then we can also, so that is pretty hard to look at right there. And then we can also pull up the infrared cam, because I believe that looks at Echo Summit as well. We were looking at this earlier, and it was showing some of that fire activity earlier. So I believe it's this left one that shows it better. So yeah, you can see yesterday when we were looking at this imagery, it was just along the ridge line, and then you can see that it's actually started to move downhill. So certainly a lot more activity and a lot closer to this camera than we were seeing yesterday. So thank you to everybody who's commenting in the live chat. That's why I love when we have our moderators in here to who do such a great job of keeping the trolls out, because it would be a shame to I would never want to turn the live chat off, because it is very useful, because it's almost like a team effort to try to uncover where the most important information is. You guys suggest cameras. You also have that better local intel for this area to tell me exactly where to look and what we're looking at. So again, thank you to the moderators and everybody who is posting such great comments and questions in the live chat. Apologies again for not always being the best at actually looking at the live chat throughout this video, but I did see one comment that somebody said look at notifications on Twitter. That means somebody might have sent a link. That is the best way to send me links. So I believe this is one of our moderators, Trish. So thanks for moderating and thanks for sending this link. This is exactly the kind of video that we're looking for. So flames on the side of Highway 50 eastbound near Echo Lake. So flames on the side of Highway 50 eastbound near Echo Lake. Let's just start it back over from the beginning. I'm not exactly sure if I'm allowed to actually be showing these videos, but I figure I can always... YouTube now has a tool where you can edit out clips of your video if it was a copyright infringement. So I'd figure better to... What's the saying? Better to act now and ask for forgiveness later or something. But yeah, looking at this imagery, it matches up with those other images we were looking at where you can see where the fire was towards, starting to come down that cliff line right there. One thing I will say, there are some parts here that it looks very rocky, so the fire would have a hard time moving directly down that, but you notice some smoke coming up down here, and that's what I'm mostly afraid about, is that flames that you see on top of that imagery right there are some of those burning embers can be picked up by the winds, drop down in here, and then create little spot fires. And that's something else that we've been seeing a number of reports about. It sounds like there have been some spot fires in the Myers area, but just incredible imagery coming out of coming out right now. So thank you very much for sending that. If anybody else has any videos or good links, you can send them to me on Twitter and I could pull it up and then we could all look at those together. But I think it's actually been a while since I went over the very key things that we're looking at here. So just in case anybody's new to the live stream, I'll say the most important things that you should know right now. Pretty clear to see based on the satellite imagery that things have picked up over the last couple of hours and really over the last 48 hours. The Caldor Fire significantly picked up in activity yesterday afternoon. It grew, I haven't heard the official number yet, but measuring it myself, it looked like it grew about 7 miles yesterday. And that was when there was, just because it was mostly low relative humidity, which means it was very dry out. And then there's also a lot of excessively dry fuels in the area. But the big concern today is that we're now combining those same factors where it's low relative humidity and very dry fuels with a red flag warning that you see with that pink color here. Basically what a red flag warning means is that it's easier for fires to start. The big reason that's important on this fire is the potential for spot fires, which is something that we've been talking about throughout the entire course of this video, is that it does sound like some spot fires have been dropping down into the Myers area and becoming established. Again, I can't officially confirm that yet, but we've seen that from maybe 4 or 5 different sources, so it does seem like spot fires have been a big factor, and it's really these two things coming together with this red flag warning. Those 20 to 35 mile per hour winds are able to pick those burning embers up, and then because of that daytime humidity as low as the single digits, all the fuels are very dry. So once we can actually look at an example on this map, you can imagine burning ember picked up, dropped into dry fuels right here, creates a little spot fire like that. And the fuels are so dry, there's about a 90 to 100% chance of ignition. So, alright, so I think I'm thinking about possibly trying to move my setup somewhere else because it keeps buffering because it's so hot in the room that I'm in right now. Hopefully it just starts to cool down over the next half hour to hour so that stops happening. But it does sound like we're back now. So, yeah, so it sounds like we're back now. So, again, what I was talking about, I'm not exactly sure when it started buffering. Again, apologies for that. Like I said, it's about 95 degrees in the room I'm filming this right now, so hopefully it'll stop buffering as much as it starts to cool down. I've got every window open possible, but what I was talking about was the fact that one of our main concerns is that Kirkwood area, and you can see that the fire perimeter here looks like it has been updated since when we were looking at it earlier. Looks like it has officially crossed Highway 88 right there, and we were seeing a number of other reports that it looks like what we were hinting at throughout the course of this video, based on the information we were collecting from a large number of different sources. But the big concern that we had, we can go back to Google Earth, and it's actually exactly in that same area, because that was the key thing that we were talking about. We were talking about how we had this fire perimeter up here, but because of the winds and some of those images that we were seeing, it looked like people were driving on Highway 50 right here. And thank you, Rob, for the super chat as well. Again, that's going towards the new computer fund so that this video can stop buffering. I believe that one video that we saw, I think it actually perfectly matches up right here. Again, if you ever have good video or links, you can send them to my Twitter, and then I can pull them up. So this was sent in by one of our great moderators, Trish, and notice on this map, actually before, or not this map, this video, and so right here it says, flames on the side of Highway 50 eastbound near Echo Lake. So looking in here, key thing I want you to notice is that clearly you're going to be able to see those flames on on the west side of Highway 50 right here, but you also notice that smoke coming up on the east side right there. So fire on the left side of the road, but the smoke coming up on the right side of the road. And I think that video perfectly matches up with what you can see right here. So it looks like Highway 50 comes right here. It looks like if that car was driving right along this road, it would be able to look up. We were also able to see how steep that terrain was in that video. You could see the flames on that side of the road, but then we were also seeing the smoke on the right side of the road. It almost looks like it was directly in that area where that person was driving. But the big update based on the other fire perimeter, now that they've updated this information, it looks like what we were afraid of has continued to happen. It looks like we're getting more and more spot fires dropping down in this area, and even we were seeing some reports of spot fires being established in the Myers area as well. So trying to match that up with the current fire perimeter, it looks like it's continued to push farther towards the northeast there, which that's basically the key theme that we've been talking about throughout the course of this video. Based on where the fire is right now and those southwesterly winds, you can tell they're southwesterly because it's pushing all that smoke towards the northeast. That has the ability to just take some of those burning embers, create little spot fires, and continue to push that fire farther towards the northeast. So because of that, that's, I think, the number one priority right now to continue to keep following. And so radio chatter about spot fires on the edge of Kirkwood. So that was perfect timing for that live chat to come in, because again, that's one of our big priorities right there, where we've heard reports of spot fires going into these communities. And then also this area right here where it looks like the most recent fire perimeter does have that moving closer towards Kirkwood. And then according to that live chat, we actually are getting the reports of spot fires in that Kirkwood area. And I do actually have access to the radio streamer, so I will turn that on momentarily just to see what we can hear. Again, sometimes it's a lot of white noise, but we'll take a listen to see if we can hear anything important about the current situation going on in Kirkwood and the Myers area as well.
Other aircraft is going to be 73 uniform, 2 Hotel Tango, and 48 Yankee. Outbound traffic is going to be guard 862, 865. If you're looking out of the icehouse ship, in the same area as Foxtrot is earlier.
Alright, for that, 3 Charlie Hotel, 50 route to 1 for ship, 6,000 below, decimal 81 for the altimeter, and dipping out of ice, we'll be looking out for 73 uniform 2, Hotel Tango 48 Yankee, and the guard ship's coming down.
Firm, and the traffic pattern is going to be keep the column on your left after you drop back to the ditch.
Alrighty, so it was pretty hard to hear exactly what was going on that radio, so I'll turn that off for the time being, because there is actually a better way. Sometimes it's very difficult to actually hear what they're saying, and then it also makes it very jumpy to try to actually present information. What I think is the better way to go about it is following CA Fire Scanner on Twitter, and then this account basically posts the most important information that's coming from that fire scanner. So we'll be able to just hear exactly or see exactly the key points that we maybe would have spent an hour or 2 hours listening trying to figure out. So right here it says KCRA News overhead of the Kirkwood area with a live stream that just started. Copters and super scoopers continue to work to the... So let's try to check this out. I'm not sure if this is copyright infringement, but I can always try to edit this out of the video later if I do get an infringement. But I do just want to see exactly what this is, because this might show exactly what we've been worried about throughout the course of this whole video. Wonder if there's sound on this. One sec, I'm going to unplug my microphone to see if there's sound as well.
The cursors are over your lat longitude patch. In the field of view is a hot spot just to the left there.
So that's at least some good news. Looks like there's some retardant in that area, which means that there is some aircraft in this area working on some structure defense. So I'd say that's possibly some good news, knowing that there is some fire suppression tactics going on. But where the bad news is where they pan right back over here, and you're going to be able to see the large amount of activity going on. Again, I believe this is in the Kirkwood area that we're looking at.
I've been seeing them fairly consistently. It looks like we got one practically under us right now at this time.
Alright, so thank you. Or I guess we got that from the fire scanner right there. That was a great... I'll plug my microphone back in so the audio is a little better. Alright, so that basically confirmed what we have been concerned about for this entire video. It's eastern fire perimeter right there, where we were seeing some reports of those spot fires moving closer and closer to the Kirkwood area. We've now seen a couple of different sources that say those spot fires have reached into the Kirkwood area. The other main concern has been on this northeastern section, where we've seen both video on the ground and a number of different sources where it does sound like we're also getting some spotting into these communities as well, and leading to an increase in fire activity there. So and then this is one of the key images that we're also looking at. This is showing the Echo Summit camera, and compared to what it looked like yesterday we had that fire right along the ridgeline, and then throughout the day today you can see that it started to move farther and farther down that ridgeline. The best way I think to be able to see that is by going right here, and this will give you a good idea of what we're actually looking at here. So we'll look at our top two concerns. Hopefully it's not buffering again. It kind of seems like it is. Okay. Sorry for the momentary. Hopefully it's not buffering. But this is one of the key spots that we're looking at. Again, we've seen that video where you see Highway 50 right there, where you could see the flames on the left side of the road, and then the spot fires that have jumped over Highway 50. based on a number of other reports, it sounds like we've gotten more spot fires moving down into this area as well. Again, I can't officially confirm that, but we have seen it from about 5 different sources at this point. And the reason that that's a concern to me is because if you think about how the terrain in this area, the winds are flowing almost directly in this direction, and then that terrain will just continue to funnel those winds even faster. So any spot fires that do drop down into this area are going to have some stronger winds, allowing them to become established. And we were hearing some reports that we did have some spot fires dropping in there. So one thing that I want to see is if we have the updated fire data to bring into Google Earth, because it did sound, or it did look like we got some updated fire data from that other one. But looks like we still have the most recent one. Except maybe right there from 5/19. I guess we could try this. Hopefully that means 5:19 p.m. because our other fire perimeter is more recent than that. So what's the best way to do this? We'll go back over to Google Earth. We'll go out of full screen here. What I'm trying to do is get the more recent fire perimeter data, because we've seen that both in the Echo Summit area, it sounds like the fire has continued to push into this area with some spot fires. Similar story for the Kirkwood area. So what I want to see is if there is more recent fire perimeter data to pull into this map so that we could look at exactly where it is. So I'll try to pull it in here. And let's see if this looks newer than our other one. So a way to see that would be to zoom into this area. Let's click our old one off. Then, so it looks like this is the more recent of the data that we're looking at. So we'll continue to look at this as we move forward. So we'll keep that big. Close it back up. And then I do want to just show this map again, because again, that is the key concern on the Caldor Fire right now. Basically all of South Lake Tahoe is in that mandatory evacuation order. And I hate to say it, but it looks like a very critical situation going on right now. That northeastern section where we didn't want to see any more growth, we've seen a number of reports that the winds that are blowing directly from the southwest, it was the worst possible wind direction that we could have had. Seeing some gusts at around 25 miles per hour. Been picking up some burning embers here, dropping them down into this area. Again, I can't officially confirm that, but it does look like that based on the most recent fire perimeter data there. And then we're also very concerned about the Kirkwood area, where on this map, it does show that it's moving closer towards Kirkwood right here, but in some other reports, we were actually seeing or hearing that some of those spot fires were directly on the western edge of Kirkwood. So let's go back to Twitter and see if we can actually see any evidence of that. So that's where it crossed Highway 50 near Echo Summit. Let's go back to home, see if we've new spot fire exploding near Echo Summit, Caldor Fire. So let's just take a look at this imagery right here. Again, this is one of those spot fires that we've been trying to track throughout the course of this video around the Echo Summit area. Basically, throughout the course of this video, we've just been watching this fire move farther to the northeast, both on the ground and because of spot fires. And I think that basically sums it up. This is the moment we feared. We were talking about this for over a week now, about that wind event was coming in. The reason we were talking about that wind event so much is because we saw where you see those orange dots there, that represents where the structures are. And we saw that this wind event was going to come in where we're seeing wind gusts up to 30 to even 40 miles per hour. And it was going to continue to push this fire farther towards the northeast. And unfortunately, there is really just almost nothing that we could do in this situation. There was a time when you'll be able to see it on this map right here, where we were holding this northern section of the fire right along that containment line right there. Yesterday, we saw all of that growth right there where it was able to cross those containment lines, and then it grew what appeared to be about 7 miles yesterday. Again, I can't confirm that number. I measured that one myself, but it looked, based on the fire perimeter data, it looked like it had grown about 7 miles yesterday. And then why this situation is as critical as it is right now is because those winds are now a factor. Yesterday, we had very dry air, and that allowed that fire activity to really pick up. But right now, we have both that dry air and the extreme winds. And that is why we're not only seeing the fire behavior itself increase, but we're also seeing more and more reports of spot fires than we were seeing yesterday. So, I want to go back. We never actually... finished looking at the CA fire scanner. We can go back to the KCRA image in a second, but so what are the chances it would reach Glenbrook, Nevada? We can actually check that out in the Google Earth, see how close it looks. And then somebody just said that is now officially up to 186,000 acres. So that took us, I would say that as of right now, I wouldn't say that's too big of a concern. It would have a long way to go to get to that area. Our big concerns right now are again in this Kirkwood area, where the most recent fire perimeter map that we have, will try to get the updated version of this as soon as we can. But we are seeing some reports that fire perimeter there, we know that it crossed Highway 88 because we can see that on the other map, but we are also getting some reports that some spot fires have possibly dropped to the west of Kirkwood. And just looking at the hotspot imagery, again, I want to organize a little better up here. Looking at the hotspot imagery, again, sometimes I don't like to show this because it's often off by quite a bit, but you can see that every time that we update this map, it looks like there's more of those squares are popping up around Kirkwood. Again, those squares in some cases can be off by a mile or two, so can't actually confirm that there is fire going on right there, but the basic trend is that we have seen it moving towards the east and the northeast, closer towards Kirkwood. So that's basically exactly what we were worried about. And then also the fire moving towards the north and northeast in this area as well, into the Myers area. We have seen a number of reports of spot fires through there. So certainly looks like it's almost exactly what we did not want to happen on the Caldor Fire throughout the day today is actually happening. And the thing that I can't even believe is that, I almost don't even want to say it, but the fire weather forecast for tomorrow is actually even more critical than today's. So I don't know what we're going to have to do to stop this thing, but I'm certainly hoping for the best at this point, because it looks like a very critical situation going on right now, just based on all the different imagery that we've been looking at, based on the reports we've been hearing about the spot fires, based on the fact that we're now seeing that perimeter move farther down here. We've heard some reports of spot fires in the Myers area. So new Caldor Fire has crossed Highway 50 near Echo Summit, where crews were attempting to make a stand and hold it back from making another hard run. Fire is headed down mountainside toward Highway 89 and Myers. So that's exactly what we were just talking about, where you can see Highway 50 along, it's that yellow line right there that moves along. If we zoom out, you'll also be able to see, I want to make sure we have north oriented right. And, oops. So there's Echo Summit right there. Yeah, it's nice to get oriented every once in a while. So you can see that's where our most recent fire perimeter data is from. And then you can see that based on a number of reports, we're hearing that this fire has continued to move down this hill right here. And that last tweet that we were looking at right there said that Caldor Fire has crossed Highway 50 near Echo Summit, where crews were attempting to make a stand. So it sounds like they were planning on using this roadway to try to stop it before it got down into where we see a large amount of structures. Just to drive that point home, you can see all those structures down there. I think it's better not to look at the active hotspots, because I don't want people to think that that entire area is on fire. Those hotspots are deceiving in some cases, but in this area, you can see where this is a bit more reliable of information, where that fire perimeter looks like it has continued to move down where we see those structures. So that map right there matches up with that map right there, and that yellow line right there is the Highway 50 they were talking about. It sounds like they were trying to use that as almost a break to be able to stop the fire, but just based on this imagery right here, just in that spot alone, you can see where it was able to jump over Highway 50. Another way to look at this is to go back to my notifications. Again, this is the best place to, so is the Caldor IR map data public? I actually don't know that. I got it from a wildfire researcher, so I will have to ask to see if that IR data that we're pulling into Google Earth is public or not. But again, this just drives home what we're seeing on the other map. The fire itself looks to be on the left side of Highway 50, but then if we start back over, you'll see the flames on the left side of Highway 50, but then you also see some smoke coming up on the right side of Highway 50, right about here. It almost looks like this perfectly matches up with what we're looking at right here, where you imagine their car might have been driving right there. You look to the left, you can see the flames on that side of the road, and then you look to the right, you have the smoke coming up from that spot fire that was able to jump over Highway 50. I think what I most want to see throughout the course of this video is I want the new fire perimeter data to come out, and then I'll be able to pull it into here, and we'll be able to see what kind of spot fires have been established in this Myers area and in that Kirkwood area as well, because that's one of the top things that we're following, and we have seen a number of reports that that is the case in those areas. So just coming back here. And actually, that's another way to drive home the point we were just making about the fire making an advance down Echo Summit. I believe you can see how many different live streams and links that I have. That's also part of the reason we have seen some buffering throughout the course of this video. Is one, I have far too many links open, and two, it's still probably about 90 degrees where I'm filming this right now. But right here on the left side of the screen that we're about to look at, that I believe is that Echo Summit area that we're talking about, where yesterday evening we saw the flames along the ridgeline, and as of right now it looks like it has started to come down that ridgeline, which was the last thing we wanted to see, because once it gets established down here, I believe that's where the winds would be stronger, and then it would continue to push that fire farther. Yeah, so somebody just said those spot fires will develop over the next several hours. Unfortunately, that is going to be the case, because a weird thing that we've been seeing this year, normally the worst wildfire time of the day is about 4 p.m. That's when it's the hottest. That's where it's the driest. That's also where it's usually the windiest. But something we've been seeing a lot this year is that the fire activity has actually been the most extreme at maybe about 7 or 8 p.m., which is something that's very interesting. I'd love to ask my advisor at San Jose State in the Fire Weather Research Laboratory exactly why that is, because we've been covering almost every fire throughout the course of this year, and it seems like on the Dixie fire, on the Caldor fire, on all the fires we've seen, it'll still be active at 4 p.m., but then as you get later into the evening, it really just starts to take off. You can see that on this map right here. Again, apologies for not following the Dixie fire at all, or what I believe that's the river complex up there. Looks like Dixie fire is absolutely taking off right now as well. But again, I think the big concern right now is still on the Caldor fire, because this is an area where spot fires are actively moving into where we see a large amount of structures. So it is important to stay on this map, and to reiterate the point that there is now a mandatory evacuation order for the entire south shore of Lake Tahoe. Now, I also heard somebody say that they updated the numbers here. So that one is not updated, but InstaWeb usually gets it updated first. And yes, Craig Clements is my advisor. It's Craig Clements and Dr. Patrick Brown are my dual advisors. Dr. Craig Clements gives the kind of wildfire aspect for my thesis, and then Dr. Patrick Brown kind of has the more climate emphasis, because what I'm basically doing for my master's thesis is building a machine learning model that ties in the weather data since 2003 with all the fire data from since 2003, and then it's able to predict whether we have a small or a large fire. And then it also ranks the factors in order of importance to show what's actually contributing to that prediction for large fires. Just a little sneak preview of what my thesis is going to show once I officially wrap it up in the next 2 months is that fuel moisture, temperature, and vapor pressure deficit are 3 of the huge things that lead to large fires, but especially the fuel moisture one. So for whatever reason, usually, so let's try Caldor Fire. It's a bit laggy. So that has been updated. Looks like it was about 7 minutes ago. Caldor Fire is now at 186,000 acres, 15% containment. So somehow we did gain 1% containment. I'm not sure where that would have happened. Personnel looks to be at around 3,700 as of right now. And yes, I am using Python for my machine learning code, using a random forest model right now, and then also comparing it with logistic regression as well. With my random forest, it has about a 0.81 area under curve. But I'll save any more information about my master's thesis when I do my official. I think I'll do an official update and official video on that when I wrap it up in 2 months. But right now, again, the key thing that we need to stay updated on is the Caldor Fire. Interested to see if there's been any recent posts from the fire scanner. We were looking at that, and then we were also looking at that as well. It just basically showed we can click back on that again. That was actually pretty interesting to see. And I'll also close out that map there so we don't start buffering again. And I'll unplug so we can actually. While I have this uploaded, it could be a good time just for me to try to go through the live chat and answer any questions that I can. We can have this in the background. I think I'll mute that. I'll plug my microphone back in. You should be able to hear, and I'll keep that on the live camera that we're seeing there, but then I'll also try to answer any questions that might have come up. So cooler air and heat causes wind to increase. So yeah, heat definitely one of the big ones that causes wildfire to increase. I think there's those 3 big fire weather variables that we always look at. We look at temperature, winds, and humidity. Yesterday on the Caldor Fire, we had the temperature and the low relative humidity. Temperature is pretty self-explanatory. If the air is hotter, that means that the wildfire is just going to burn more. That one probably just makes sense. With the low relative humidity, how I always think about that is the drier the air is, the drier the fuels are going to be, and especially those finer fuels that can change their moisture content very rapidly. So if you've ever started a campfire with a moist log or a dry log, it probably makes intuitive sense that the drier those fuels are, the easier it is for spot fires to start, something that we've seen on the Caldor Fire throughout the entire course of this live stream. Some of those spot fires appearing to get closer to the Kirkwood area and the Myers area as well. So that's the big reason that temperature and humidity is important, mainly for how dry it makes the fuels. And then winds, I think winds are actually the biggest factor because it combines lots of different things. The winds can just basically push that fire forward. It can also provide more oxygen to the fire, but then it can also tie in with that dry air, which causes the dry fuels, by creating spot fires. You can imagine those burning embers are picked up. They're dropped into those critically dry fuels, and then it starts a new little spot fire. And that's something we've seen on the Caldor Fire. They've been saying that when there are spot fires, there's about a 90 to 100% chance of those embers starting a new little fire. And that is something that we've seen on the Caldor Fire just in the last couple of hours, with those spot fires continuing to move the fire farther towards the northeast into areas closer towards Kirkwood and the Myers area as well. Oh, and then I also saw somebody ask, what the conditions are supposed to be like tomorrow. So that is actually something we haven't looked at in a while, because I know there's already just so much going on right now that I almost don't want to overwhelm people any more than they need to be. But that is one of the unfortunate things in the fire weather forecast, is as we go into tomorrow, it's actually going to be even more of a critical fire weather forecast than we're seeing right now. So again, everything I was just mentioning about a lot of the big factors that lead to fire growth, temperature, winds, humidity, they've all been a factor throughout the day today. But let's look at what the current winds are showing up as at about 30 miles per hour. So it's maybe calmed down a little bit since when they were peaking at about 4 p.m. But the main thing that I'm worried about as we move forward is that tomorrow afternoon is actually expected to be even windier than our conditions today. You can see those wind gusts getting up to 37 miles per hour tomorrow. That was something that the National Weather Service was saying as well, with that red flag warning in place until 11 p.m. on Wednesday. So actually, that's the first time I've noticed that they extended it. The last time I looked at this, it was 11 p.m. Tuesday, and now it looks like Wednesday is included in that as well. If we look at Wednesday's winds, I imagine they're going to be pretty strong as well, above 30 miles per hour. So looks like we have another critical day tomorrow, looking at the temperatures, similar temperatures to today, and then critically dry air as well into the low teens and single digits. So I think my big concern for the next few hours is that those spot fires that we've been talking about that seem to be moving into that Myers and Kirkwood area, that with the continued activity that we're currently seeing right now, you can see based on the satellite imagery, it's certainly not calming down at all in the last 30 minutes. If anything, it looks like it's still picking up in intensity. So what I'm mostly worried about right now is that those spot fires that we've been hearing about around these northeastern sections of the fire will continue to be established and fueled by those critical conditions we have. But then my big concern moving forward from that is looking at the forecast for tomorrow. We have another day of high winds. We have another day where we're in that red flag warning. We have another day where we have some relative humidity where we're in the single digits. So even if we do somehow make it out of the end of today safely, we're still going to have some very critical conditions, not only tomorrow, but it appears trending into Wednesday as well. That red flag now in effect until 11 p.m. on Wednesday. So lots of different factors working against us. One thing I said, we're talking about those southwesterly winds coming in for about maybe a week now. We've been following this wind event, and what ended up happening yesterday was the worst thing that could have happened. Was because it flared up so much yesterday, we saw the fire move past containment lines and grew what was possibly 5 or 7 miles throughout the day yesterday, especially on that northern section and that eastern section right there. So what that did was it took all of the progress that they had been making and had been preparing for the wind event and basically canceled all that progress before the wind event even came in. So now that the wind event's actually here, now we're actually seeing the impacts of what the combination of all of those different factors working against us right now. And just going back, I do want to see if this has been updated yet, because I really want to pull the new fire data into Google Earth so we can actually match it up with some of those communities that we're concerned about. But it looks like it hasn't been updated yet. Maybe I have to update it up here. Now we'll keep coming back to that to see if we can pull the new fire perimeter data into Google Earth, just because that's where we were talking about those spot fires coming down Echo Summit here. And then as of right now, it sounds like we're continuing to get some more spot fires dropping down into this area and becoming established, where we do have those strong winds being able to fuel some of those spot fires and flare them up again. So definitely going to look for the updated fire perimeter there, but we don't have that yet. So in the meantime, we can, again, I'm hoping it's not buffering. My computer is kind of buffering right now. But I just want to go back to the home. If you have any camera or video footage, you can send it to me on Twitter and then I'll be able to pull it up here. But this is actually something that we haven't talked about at all throughout the course of the video because we've been so focused on the Caldor Fire, but we actually have the second largest wildfire in the history of California also burning at this exact same time. This is some incredible footage coming out from the Dixie fire. So man, so maybe we might have to take a quick break from the collective fire, or from the, that was me reading the live chat and talking at the same time. I do, based on that imagery, I think we should take a quick look and see what's going on the Dixie fire. Because it looks like it is getting that same effect from the low relative humidity and that massive increase in winds. Just looking at the satellite imagery right now for Northern California, you can see the river complex up here, possibly the Monument Fire burning right there too. Then we have, you'd think that was two different fires because it's so far away from each other, but that's actually the two different areas of the Dixie fire. A lot of that activity picking up right there on the northeastern section where we're seeing that pyrocumulus cloud, and then lots of activity on the Caldor Fire as well. So just briefly want to, that northern section isn't near as many structures, but I do just want to check in on Taylorsville. So it looks like a lot of that activity is down here on the Dixie Fire, which if it has to be anywhere, we would rather, in the past we were seeing that hotspot right here, and what we were worried about was that it was going to move up into Taylorsville. So if it had to move in one direction, we would choose for it to move away from where we have the large amount of structures there. But now it looks like it's starting to get dangerously close to some of these other areas. So we actually might have to continue to try to stay updated on the Dixie Fire as we move forward, because that is far more activity than we were seeing in previous days. In previous days, it was just that little area right there burning, and it looks like it has significantly picked up throughout the day today, getting a bit closer towards those structures, but the winds are predominantly from the southwest, so hopefully it would just be pushing that fire farther up to the northeast away from those areas. But I will say that if you do live in any of these areas where we are seeing those structures, again with those orange dots that I'm flashing on and off right there, I would certainly stay updated with the local resources and try to figure out if there are any new evacuation warnings or orders. I believe I actually have a link for the Dixie Fire evacuation map. So there's the structure status, Butte, Plumas, and Tehama County evacuation orders. I would imagine there's maybe some new ones popping up on the Dixie Fire, just looking at that other map there. So it definitely looks like there is. The last time we saw this, I do not believe it was extending this far down to the south where you see that red. That's where there's mandatory evacuation orders. So I'm glad that's why we keep going back to Twitter, because it keeps you updated. That's actually why I changed the format for these videos. I used to just research fires for an hour or two, and then just say everything in 30 minutes without looking at live chat or any new information coming out. But the wildfires are changing so fast this year that we have to stay updated with what's actually going on the ground, because it changes so fast. And looks like the situation is changing on the Dixie Fire with some new evacuation orders being put in place. Just again, it looks to be on that southeastern section of the fire, southeast of Lake Almanor, where it looks like it's getting closer to some of those communities down there. But with that being said, I'm glad that we mentioned that, but we are going to go on back down to the Caldor Fire because I do think that does still remain the number one priority right now, because while the Dixie Fire does show those hotspots getting close to some communities, we've seen a number of reports on the Caldor Fire that the fire itself is actually within the communities. But first, I just want to say another thank you to Lucy and I believe it's pronounced Jean for contributing to the new computer fund. That's a new joke that we have throughout this live stream because we've had 2 different times where the computer started buffering like crazy because it's about 95 degrees where I'm filming this, and the old computer just can't take it at this point, especially when I have about 50 tabs open. So thank you again. And also thank you, Lucy, for doing such a great job of moderating. But just coming back to the Caldor Fire, just in case you're new to the live stream, we'll do a brief overview of everything that we've kind of learned throughout the last couple of hours since we've been live. Fire activity has significantly picked up on the Caldor Fire. You'll be able to see some of those pyrocumulus clouds popping up right there. The key areas that we're concerned about are Kirkwood right here, and then also this area around Echo Summit and the Myers area as well, where this map doesn't show those fire perimeters actually moving into those areas, but we have been seeing a number of reports that there are spot fires working their way into Kirkwood. I always say Kirkland, I don't know why. Kirkwood, and then Myers as well. So that's one of the big things that we've learned throughout this video. We've also learned that the spot fires have jumped over Highway 50 around the Echo Lake area, and then we've also learned that the spot fires have jumped Highway 88 in the Kirkwood area. And you can actually see it's not just spot fires that have jumped Highway 88. It looks like the fire perimeter itself has jumped Highway 88. Now, again, driving the point home for why we're so concerned about those areas, when I click on the structures here, actually I'm going to turn off the hotspots. I think that's sometimes deceiving because it makes it look like everything underneath there is burned, but that's not actually the case. As you'll be able to see, even this one's a little deceiving sometimes. But going in here, those orange dots that I'm flashing on and off, those are the areas we're the most concerned about. There's Kirkwood down here, which we are hearing some reports where those spot fires have moved into the Kirkwood area, but I think that's big concern. But also this area around the northeastern section of the Dixie Fire, where we've seen a number of reports, and you can actually see that fire perimeter has been updating throughout the course of this video, and now does look like it is starting to establish itself in some of those communities. So going to be very important to stay updated with that map as that continues to be updated. Again, let's reorient ourselves here just to make sure we're looking north is right and we're looking at all the right things here. I will also try to update this map as we move forward, and we actually most likely will be able to update this because they run those aircraft missions pretty consistently. So I believe within maybe the next 30 minutes to the next hour, we'll be able to get an updated map of this. What we were looking at earlier is this is what the Caldor Fire looked like on the 28th. You can see where Lake Tahoe is up here. There's Echo Summit right there. So you can see how far away Echo Summit was from the Caldor Fire on the 28th. Then, if I flip on the fire perimeter for the 30th, this was, I believe, taken at about 4 p.m. this afternoon, you can see how much the fire is extended in those key areas that we're concerned about, the Echo Summit area and the Kirkwood area. Just in case you missed it, it's that northeastern and that eastern section of the fire where we've seen so much growth over the last 48 hours. So I'll just turn on the 30th so we're not confused here. But zooming in down here to the Kirkwood area, should be able to see it pop up in a second. So this is what it looked like at about 4 p.m. You can see where that, let's close that so it's a bit better. Hopefully it's not buffering again. My computer is. So there's that where the fire perimeter had extended as the last time that this fire perimeter data was collected. But as of some of the recent reports, it sounds like those southwesterly winds have been picking up some burning embers here and have actually been pushing this fire. Actually, we know that it has been pushing this fire farther east since this fire perimeter data came out, because we now have confirmation that it has crossed Highway 88 in this area. We've seen that on the other map. I'll just show that again just in case you're just coming in to the live stream. It's even on this one. There's that fire perimeter right there. There's Highway 88. Zooming back out, you can see Kirkwood right there. So that part of the fire perimeter has continued to extend closer to the Kirkwood area, seeing some spot fires in that area. And then the other spot that we're very concerned about is this Echo Summit and Echo Lake spot, where we've been seeing spot fires moving down this hill, the fire itself moving down this hill. And one second. Yeah, so this is the most recent data, but the last time we were looking at this, we could actually see where it had jumped over Highway 50. So interesting that that's not popping up anymore. And thank you again very much, Michael, for the super chat. It's by the end of this video, I might actually have enough in the computer fund to actually upgrade my setup here so that we have less buffering in the future. But just looking at this imagery, the big thing that we've been concerned about is this fire continuing to move down into this area. We've seen a number of reports that spot fires have moved into Myers. Just to drive the point home, where you can see there's Highway 50 right there. There's where the old fire perimeter was. If we go back to my Twitter, I know I've shown this a couple times, but it does perfectly illustrate one of the key things that we're talking about. Again, there's that imagery from the Dixie fire. That's one thing I should say. There are new evacuation warnings and orders on the Dixie fire. So I haven't been talking about that all that much, just because of the fact that the fire appears to actually be moving into some of the Caldor Fire communities. But that is something to know if you are new to this live stream. New evacuation orders on the Dixie fire with the increase in activity we've seen there. So this imagery is driving along Highway 50. First thing you notice is that fire has actually moved down all the way down to where we are seeing Highway 50. And then if you look on the right side of the road, you're going to see this smoke coming up right here. So that we can match up with the Google Earth right here. You can imagine this fire perimeter right here moved down this hill. We can really zoom in right here, because I believe it was right here that it did cross. Moved down this hill where we were looking at the left side of the road. That's where we saw the flames right there. And then we also had some spot fires get established in here. Again, I'm not sure why the fire perimeter isn't showing those spot fires anymore right there, but when we were looking at this earlier, you could actually see it extending down this section of the hill, then crossing over Highway 50. Now, the big concern that we have, though, is future spot fires. We still have those wind gusts. If you need proof of that, we can just look at the satellite imagery, where you can see on the Summit fire, winds are still very strong in this area. You know that because if the winds had calmed down, a lot of that smoke would just be settling over the Caldor fire. But as you can see, it's still rushing into Nevada and South Lake Tahoe as well. So that tells you that there are still some strong winds. So my concern thinking about that is the possibility of more of those spot fires happening, where more of those embers are picked up right here, drop down into the Myers area. And I think something, so just want to close that. So it was Neil LaRoe who posted this. Again, this is a great account to follow if you are interested in really getting into the science behind a lot of these fires. He's one of the top wildfire researchers in the world. I was lucky enough to actually sit on a fire with him for about 8 hours and be able to listen to him dissecting all the different different aspects of how the plume was rotating, how the wildfire was creating his own weather. But one thing that he did post here was this video, big uptick on the radar just south of Myers. And this was when we really started to have become worried that there was some spot fires developing in this area. Hopefully the live stream isn't buffering again, because this video isn't exactly playing. Let's try to reload the web page. Again, sorry for the slow computer here. This is what happens when you have 30 tabs open and it's 95 degrees where you're filming this. So right there, he says big uptick just south of Myers. And right there, I can't officially confirm this yet, but it does look like some spot fires have moved into this area. And you can imagine that's almost like a new smoke plume being established in that area. Can't officially confirm it, but we have seen from I think maybe 4 or 5 different sources that it seems like we are seeing some spot fires developing in that area. You also see an uptick in the Kirkwood area as well. We have seen a couple of sources saying that there were some spot fires developing on the west side of Kirkwood, and right about there you do start to see an uptick in that radar reflectivity there as well. Now, this is actually a new one. There is now a spot up on the hill on the east side of Highway 89 south of Myers. So I think that actually perfectly pairs up with the other video that we were just looking at, where it sounded like where it looked on the radar like there was some kind of spot fire being established on that south end of Myers. And this is actual footage of it. Again, not exactly sure why it's not playing. I'll maybe close out some tabs here real quick. In the meantime, I could try to answer some questions. I can see maybe a number of people have typed in Glenbrook. I imagine Glenbrook, California is the one we're interested in. And search. And I imagine, unless there's maybe some new fire that was established, I imagine that's maybe not the Glenbrook that we're interested in hearing about. But again, just looking at this, so there's Myers right there, tying it in with everything we were just looking at. So it did look like on that radar that we had that spot fire being developed south of Myers right there, but I can't officially confirm that. One other source, I know we were having some trouble with Twitter. Really need the conditions to cool down, but seems like it's going to be a warm night in the mountains right now. So I know Daniel Swain, I believe, also posted about that spot fire in that Myers area. So unfortunately, it now appears that the fire has entered the wildland urban interface in Christmas Valley and near southern edge of Myers. So that right there just confirms everything that we were just talking about. That was posted 16 minutes ago. This was the reason for the mass evacuations from southern Tahoe Basin earlier today. Just in the meantime, I should show that again, because that is probably, I should have a timer to show this every 5 or 10 minutes. All of South Lake Tahoe now has a mandatory evacuation warning. So for that entire area, now is no longer the time to pack up. Now is the time to just get out, because if we look, when I usually don't show this live hotspot map because it makes the fire look a lot worse than it most likely is. But when talking about evacuation warnings, that is where the satellite imagery is picking up some of this heat signature. Again, it's not perfect. We've seen it be off by a mile or two in the past, but you can see where the satellite has that heat signature right now. So if you're still in the South Lake Tahoe area, I would certainly get out immediately. So going back to read the rest of that tweet, because that was very informative. This was the reason for the mass evacuations from southern Tahoe Basin earlier today. Southwesterly winds next 24 hours could push the fire through populated areas. So that's the other thing that we've been talking about throughout the course of this video, is that, and I'll just pull this up while we're talking about it, but that's the other thing we've been talking about throughout the course of this video, is that unfortunately the fire weather forecast for tomorrow is actually looking even more critical than the fire weather forecast today. I hate to say that, but today we were seeing some winds maybe around 35 miles per hour, and tomorrow there is the chance. Oh, did I accidentally say warning? Oh, thank you very much, Michael, for putting that in there. Yeah, I certainly did not mean to say warning, definitely meant to say order. I'm going to show that again just in case I did accidentally say warning. Right there, that red color right there, that is mandatory evacuation order, which means it's no longer time to pack up, it's time to get out. That yellow color is a warning. That means it's time to get ready and be ready to leave, pack up the car, possibly do some structure protection as well. But whole South Lake Tahoe area is where there is a mandatory evacuation order. And the reason for that, you can see it right here. So again, just to get our bearings on what we're actually looking at, this is, unfortunately, it now appears that the fire has entered the wildland urban interface in Christmas Valley and near southern edge of Myers. So looking at that, it looks like this is looking downhill. So I imagine the fire started up here. This is what we've been tracking for quite some time, and then moved down into this area. Most likely it was some spot fires that were dropped down in here. You can see how much fuel we have in this area. In many cases it's critically dry fuel, and then it gets established down there. And then what can lead to some very dangerous situations, you can see some torching going on right there as well. What can lead to some very dangerous situations is you get a spot fire that drops down here, and then wildfires like to burn uphill. So then once the spot fire is established, then it actually starts to burn back up into the main fire, and that can lead to a lot of rapid fire spread. So also I will mention that apologies for not keeping a good eye on the live chat. I'm still trying to master the art of finding the most useful information, presenting the most useful information, and keeping an eye on the live chat as well. So apologies if anybody's been asking any questions or commenting or asking about specific places, but it looks like in the last maybe hour there has been some huge updates on the Caldor Fire. So really trying to just figure out as much information as we can about this right now. So this one said, not good, Caldor Fire. Pick 1 is on the hillside east of Christmas Valley, Highway 89. Pick 2 is beneath Highway 50. That's going to Nevada, says one firefighter near me. It's way bigger than it looks from here, says his lookout. So just going back here, I actually didn't even mean for it to be right here, but this is exactly the image I wanted to show. That's where the fire perimeter was earlier today. There's the Christmas Valley Road. You can see Highway 50 is that yellow line right there. And what the reports are showing is that those spot fires have been established down into the Christmas Valley area. As of right now, most of the reports were saying it's south of Myers. So it seems like some burning embers were picked up by those southwesterly winds, dropped down into Christmas Valley, and then in some of those cases it looks like it's starting to burn back uphill towards the main fire itself. So that's literally exactly what we did not want to see, because looking into Christmas Valley, go back to Cal Topo, that's this part of the fire. We have, I believe that's Echo Lake right there. That's where the fire perimeter was. And then you see those orange dots right there. Those are all structures. So you can see there are hundreds of structures in this area. And it looks like based on, actually, this fire perimeter keeps updating as well, but also just based on those videos we were just watching, looks like some spot fires have dropped down into that area. And I imagine the reason that I'm also so concerned about this area is if we zoom in, I can't actually confirm this, but I just based on the dynamics of this situation, it seems like it would be the case. So let's try to get better oriented here. So you can see Lake Tahoe far off in the distance there. Thank you very much, Cliff, for the super chat. That also just reminded me to say again that apologies as well for not looking at the live chat very well. I usually only see it if there's a bright flash of color, but I will at some point try to scroll back through the live chat and try to figure out exactly what questions have been asked. But what I'm trying to say here, and I'm not going to say this to try to create any unnecessary fear, but just based on the dynamics of what's going on in this area. So there's the fire perimeter, or where it used to be. There's Highway 50. We now have confirmation that the fire perimeter has dropped down into Christmas Valley. Or not the perimeter, but some spot fires have now dropped into Christmas Valley. And this ties into something that we learned actually in the course of this video, is that during the nighttime hours, we get southerly winds blowing towards the lake. So, again, I'm not saying this to create any unnecessary fear, but if we have spot fires being developed in Christmas Valley right here, and then we start to get those southerly winds picking up in the next couple of hours, last time we looked at it, it showed that by about 11, we were going to have directly southerly winds blowing directly at Lake Tahoe. My big fear there is that it would take those spot fires that have been developed in Christmas Valley and then continue to move them farther to the north. So, again, I certainly hope that is not the case, but just looking on where the fire perimeter is right now, looking at some of the videos that we're looking at, and then also looking at the live hotspots. Actually, let's not look at the live hotspots because, again, those can be off by a mile or two, and I can't confirm that it's moved all the way up to that area yet. In our most recent reports, it sounded like the fire was still south of Myers. I haven't actually seen an update yet that the fire has moved into Myers yet, but we have seen confirmation that it has moved into Christmas Valley, which is one of the main things that we've been following throughout the course of this video. But right there it says near southern edge of Myers. And then to see the fire itself, I should probably take a sip of water real quick. Alright, so based on this imagery, you can see which way is downhill. You can see the flames uphill, but then you can see how it has spotted downhill. So I believe that's Christmas Valley down there. Thank you very much, Dennis, for the super chat. Man, like I was saying, we might actually get that new computer fund finished by the end of this video, and then hopefully tomorrow I have less buffering going on. Again, apologies for those 2 times throughout this video, and possibly even more than 2 times that we have had that buffering problem. So what I want to show here is where I believe that video was taken. So right here is the fire perimeter. There's Echo Lake. There's Highway 50. It looked like they were on Highway 50, but it also looked like they were completely turned around here. So we actually have to turn ourselves around. Let's see if we can do this without getting too disoriented. And we did. Okay. That, I think, gets us now where I want to look. So there's the fire perimeter. There's Christmas Valley. We're now looking directly south. So I flipped the map around because I want it to match up with that other video we were looking at. I imagine that that car was right about on this road. And then it looks like from Highway 50 in that imagery, you could see that the fire was certainly on this hill, but then it now looks like it has developed down into Christmas Valley as well. So just matching that up, you imagine the car is right there on Highway 50. That's where the fire perimeter used to be. And again, that was earlier this afternoon that the fire perimeter was up there. So just based on this video that we're looking at here, you can see how much that fire has continued to spread to the northeast. Again, have to emphasize it's to the northeast because I flipped the map around there, but you think this car is most likely on Highway 50 right here. You can see on the left side of the road is where we're looking downhill. Clearly the fire has moved down to Highway 50, and now it looks like those spot fires have dropped down into Christmas Valley and look to be well established at this point as well. Looks like there's a large amount of fuel in there as well, which is not good news to see. Yeah, you can actually see that on this map, how much fuel is in that area. So again, let's see if I can turn this around without getting too confused here. Looking up Christmas Valley here. Now we're reoriented. Those spot fires appear to have dropped down into this area. Again, one of my main concerns moving forward is for the next few hours, it appears that we're going to be having southerly winds that would try to push those spot fires farther up towards the Myers area as those southerly winds come in and move towards Lake Tahoe tonight. Now, just want to illustrate what I'm saying there, just so you know I'm not making up those southerly winds that we're talking about. So again, not sure why it always has me go down to Honduras whenever I look at this map. Back up to the Caldor Fire. So interested to see what the wind direction is as of right now. As of right now, looks like it's still mostly southwesterly, but then as we get into tonight, you notice that it moves much more from a southern direction. And I just want to, let's zoom in here because it turns into a better map if you zoom in. So there's Myers. You imagine there's Lower Echo Lake. That's Highway 50 where those spot fires have been developed. And that paints the picture of what I'm trying to say. So we'll click on Myers right there. So we found our spot that we're interested in. You can see those southerly winds push towards the lake during the nighttime hours. And unfortunately, at 2 a.m., it appears that they're still around 23 miles per hour. Now, the reason for that, it almost looks like it's stronger in this area right here. Now, the reason for that, I would say you can think about what this topography would do to the winds. So right here, you can imagine these spot fires get established right in here. We've actually seen that on some of the videos. And then those southerly winds get funneled through this valley during those nighttime hours. That's why if you look at this windy map, which is right here, maybe around here you have maybe some wind gusts in the teens, but right in Christmas Valley you still have wind gusts at 25 miles per hour as we get into 2 a.m. tonight. So the reason for that is where you can see we're in that valley. How I always think of this is, I know I already said this, but it's been on maybe 3 hours since I said this, so I'm just going to say it again because it is my favorite way to think about winds funneling through a valley. If you have a hose and you're pouring water out and you put your finger over the end of the hose, that's going to significantly increase the speed that that water is coming out. And the exact same thing happens in a valley or a canyon like this, where the winds are almost pinched through this area and then it's able to increase the wind speeds. Now, the reason that's such a concern on this fire is because that's where we have those spot fires being established. That's where the winds are expected to continue into tonight, and it does look like, unfortunately, staying relatively gusty even through the overnight hours in the exact place where we wouldn't want to see them. Now, temperature-wise, it looks like there is going to be some recovery as we get into later tonight into early this morning. Last night, we had very poor relative humidity recovery, so I'm interested to see what this shows. It's exactly what we did not want to see. So by about 2 a.m., you'd like to see your humidity jump up to maybe 60 or 70%, but it looks like we have another night where we have very poor relative humidity recovery, which means that at 2 a.m., it's almost going to be as dry and as windy as we sometimes see at 4 p.m. So it does look like that fire activity that has been able to establish in Christmas Valley will be continuing over the next few hours, and I hate to say it, but possibly even into tomorrow morning as well. We might be waking up to see that this fire has continued to move farther towards the north, which is the last thing that we want to see, because you can see how many structures are in that area. And I will just say that I just took a look over at the live chat, and Mickey, White Dove, Michael, we have Howling Dog. Thank you very much for the very generous super chats. That's greatly appreciated. And again, I think I also saw somebody say that will help make these videos better in the future. I'll be able to invest in some better equipment so that there's no buffering. So thank you very much for helping make these videos better. And also thank you to everybody who's been posting questions and comments in the live chat. Again, I'm pretty bad at talking about a map and reading the live chat at the same time, but in the cases where I have looked over, it seems like every single time I look over, there's very useful information to go off of. And also, huge thank you to the moderators for allowing that to be the case, where that live chat stays informative. Now, I do want to check notifications just in case anybody sent a new video or link. So, thank you, Hayden, for sending this one. Here's a video of the fire moving down Echo Summit across Highway 50. Intense fire along Highway 50 just on the Tahoe side of Echo Summit. Cabins involved, major torching and crown fire. So this also goes along with what we've been covering over the last maybe 20 minutes of that. The fact that the Caldor Fire does appear to be in the Christmas Valley area. If you're looking uphill, you're looking almost towards Echo Lake or Echo Summit, where you see that very steep terrain, and it looks like that is a cabin right there that is involved. So that's actually the first video that we've seen throughout this. Actually, I think we may have seen this video earlier in this live stream, but I just didn't notice that was actually a cabin up on that hill up there. But that is our first confirmed sighting of a structure being destroyed. And then, sorry, there's a fly going right on my computer screen real quick. But that does remind me, if anybody else has any other videos or links to send, you can send them to my account on Twitter, and then I can pull them up here. But in the meantime, I do want to see. So this is another great account to follow, the SJSU Fire Weather Lab. A look at the Caldor Fire as it crosses Highway 50 near Echo Summit. Just incredibly sad. This doesn't even look real, but it's incredibly real. So another video right there, that's what you call torching, where an entire tree just basically bursts into flames. And that's pretty much, so radio traffic virtually non-existent on the northeast of the fire in South Lake Tahoe. Feeds are located and oriented on the west end, hence the lean on photogs on the ground there. Make sure not to retweet anything old or vague. We'll pass scanner info along when it comes. So that's very interesting. They wouldn't have radio on the northeastern section of the fire. I'll have to look into that further. That's pretty interesting. Right here it says flames on the face of Echo Summit. Never expected to see this in my lifetime. Crews in Christmas Valley preparing. Yeah, so Cal Fire has now confirmed that there are flames in the Tahoe Basin. This is basically what we've been following throughout this entire video. Caldor Fire roaring through Christmas Valley. And this actually explains why we're getting so much video out of this area. Is because if that was in fact true, that there's radio traffic virtually non-existent on the northeastern section of the fire, says hence the lean on photogs. So maybe that's why we're seeing so much imagery out of that northeastern section. It's because they actually don't have radio up there, so that they're relying on photographers to know exactly where that the fire is burning. So I paused right here. One thing I will say, thanks again Patricia for the super chat. So I paused right here because Zeke Lunder is another great account to follow. He posts great images of the infrared mixed with Google Earth, and he says the active part of the fire north of Greenhorn Ranch ran about 11 miles / 30,000 acres to the east today. It sounds like this was the result of a large firing operation along dozer lines on the top of Grizzly Ridge north of Greenhorn Ranch. So that kind of ties in to what we were talking about with the Dixie fire earlier. Again, I am mostly going to continue to follow the Caldor Fire here because that's where we have confirmation that the fire has actually moved into some communities, and there's evacuation orders in place for all of South Lake Tahoe. But routinely, we do have to make sure that we come back up to this Dixie fire area, because based on the satellite imagery, you can see there's a massive amount of activity going on that north or that southeastern section there. Much more activity than we were seeing in previous days. And if we look at the active hotspots, you can see how much activity has picked up there. In previous days, it was maybe just that area to the east of Taylorsville where we were seeing some hotspot activity, but it now looks like all of that has now been fueled by those southwesterly winds, just like we're seeing on the Caldor Fire. And according to that report, it sounded like it was maybe a firing operation. But with that being said, you can see that there are some communities in this area. Thank you very much, Tom, for the super chat. Greatly appreciated. But you can see that there are some communities in this area just to the south and west of where all of that activity is going on the Dixie Fire. So because of that, we actually have some new evacuation orders being put in place in that area. So did just want to bring that up. I'm glad that he posted that imagery right there, because we've been so focused on the Caldor Fire that it's easy to forget about the Dixie Fire. But unfortunately, it looks like we have a pretty critical situation going on the Dixie Fire as well, with that increase in activity throughout the day today. So I don't think we've missed anything else to... Well, that's Caldor Fire made a hard push into the edges of the Lake Tahoe Basin overnight. That's some of the imagery overnight, and I imagine there's going to be more of that imagery coming out over the next couple of hours. Let's just check and see if the fire scanner's gotten anything. It makes sense. I have a fire scanner, but I turned it off because we weren't really hearing anything useful. And it makes sense because he says that there's radio traffic's virtually non-existent on the northeastern section of the Caldor Fire in South Lake Tahoe. And then we already... So, actually we hadn't looked at this one yet. Caldor Fire rolled out below Echo Summit, then roared back up the canyon on Highway 50. So, just looking at the imagery here, if you're looking downhill, you have Christmas Valley down there. If you're looking uphill, you have Echo Summit. Looks like large amount of activity going on there, and that ties into something that we were talking about earlier, where what can happen on this fire and where it leads to some rapid growth is where if you drop a spot fire down here in Christmas Valley, fires like to burn uphill. So then it starts moving rapidly uphill and then connects with the major blaze, and that's where spot fires can really lead to some rapid fire spread, because instead of the fire just inching along on the ground, it can drop a spot fire down here, then it starts burning uphill, and then it connects with the blaze. And when you might look at the map the next day, it just looks like the fire continued to move, but it was because it was helped by that spot fire to lead to that rapid spread. But again, I do have to say that this fire perimeter that we're looking at right here is in fact old. We now have confirmation that spot fires have crossed Highway 50 there, have dropped down into Christmas Valley, and have become established. We've seen numerous videos that have shown that there have been some structures destroyed already in this area, and unfortunately, as we get into tonight, we're going to have southerly winds pushing up Christmas Valley, which would try to take those spot fires that have been established and push them farther up towards Lake Tahoe. The reason that's my number one concern right now is because if we go back to the Caldor Fire, you can see that's the area of the fire where we have thousands of structures up here. Going to turn off the live heat imagery because, again, that always makes it look way worse than it actually is. Not saying that all of those structures have burned yet. The most recent update we found said that the spot fires were still south of Myers. That was the most recent information that we found on that area. Haven't been able to find very much recent information on what's going on in Kirkwood. Fire crews from the Tahoe Douglas Fire District watching the fire count back down near South Upper Truckee Road and Panorama. Fire crews are setting up for structure defense. A bear has been spotted in the area as well. And then we looked at that imagery. And then there he's talking about the Dixie fire again. That's also something you can't forget. We have some new evacuation orders on the Dixie fire as well. There are now multiple large slopovers spanning about 4 miles on the firing operation on the 10 road north of Silver Lake, 15 miles north of Westwood. The largest has run about 2.5 miles, 2,000 acres, and spotted over. That's interesting. I'm surprised there was a firing operation today with the red flag conditions. That's actually something I haven't shown in a while. If you're wondering why this is happening right now, why we're seeing those spot fires get closer to Kirkwood, why the Caldor Fire has moved into Christmas Valley, the big reason for it comes down to, first off, it's a combination of many, many different factors. So you can never actually just say that it's one. But yesterday afternoon really started to kick off what we're seeing now. Yesterday afternoon, if we look at this map right here, we had some containment lines in place around, I believe it was right around there. The color coding on this map shows when the fire activity happened. So that green color there is where it burned on the 15th and the 16th when it went through Grizzly Flats and destroyed, I believe, over 400 structures in that area. And then you notice ever since then it's mostly been growing to the northeast here. And one sec, I'm going to take a sip of water. I can feel myself starting to lose my voice. Alrighty, just got to take a nice deep breath. So, looking at where, actually, before I talk about this map too much, I do want to make sure it's the most recent one. So this is something you can do. Go to InsuWeb, go to Caldor Fire, click on Maps, and it was the most recent one from about 12 hours ago. So, shows the progression of the fire where you see that green color there. That's where the fire burned on, where it first started on the 15th and the 16th as it moved through Grizzly Flats. Then the big story that we were talking about in yesterday's update and forecast was we had some previous containment lines put in place. You can actually see where they were right about there. And then we had some very warm, dry conditions come in yesterday. A lot of the smoke cleared out as well, which got rid of that useful smoke inversion that we had through Thursday, Friday, and Saturday when we had the weaker winds. And you probably noticed if you live in California that smoke and the air quality got really bad Friday and Saturday. But that was actually good for the Caldor Fire because all of that smoke was keeping the conditions a lot calmer and cooler. But then that smoke inversion lifted Sunday afternoon, and the fire, because of that clearing and mostly because of how dry the air was, we had some relative humidity in the low teens and even single digits. It was able to jump over those containment lines, and then it basically took off after that. In that purple color, you can see how much it grew yesterday. I can't actually confirm this number because I measured it myself, but I believe it was about 7 miles of growth on this northeastern section there. And then we also had a large amount of growth on this eastern finger right there that has continued to push closer and closer towards Kirkwood. So that, again, was from 13 hours ago on the Dixie Fire. And since then, we've just continued to see it move farther in those exact same places that we had a lot of that activity yesterday. The reason for that is just like yesterday, we had a lot of that clearing air. If you look at the satellite imagery, you notice doesn't look like it looked on Friday where we had just smoke covering all of California. Saturday as well had very poor air quality. So we had similar conditions to yesterday in the fact that we had that clearing air and very low relative humidity. But what has made today especially bad, and I would say even worse than yesterday, is the fact that we've also had an increase in the winds. So yesterday, I believe we had some wind gusts maybe up to about 25 miles per hour. But today, we had some wind gusts up to 35 miles per hour. Big reason for that is that red flag warning where you see those west to southwest wind gusts 20 to 35 miles per hour with that daytime humidity in the low teens to single digits. And it's those southwesterly winds that have just been pushing this fire farther and farther towards the northeast. And what I always think is the biggest factor on these fires, this is something that we've seen play a huge role on the Dixie Fire this year. We've seen it play a huge role on the Caldor Fire over the last couple of hours, but it's the impact of spot fires. So you imagine that's where the hot spots were, right around Echo Summit. Then you get the burning embers picked up by the winds, dropped into Christmas Valley, create spot fires, and then those start burning uphill and then connect with the major blaze. We're also seeing those spot fires in to the west of Kirkwood. I haven't actually confirmed that they've moved into Kirkwood yet. That's something that we have to try to find updates on because it was maybe an hour and a half ago that I last saw somebody mention Kirkwood. But the last mention that we had of it, they said that the fire was pushing closer towards the western edge of Kirkwood and that we did have some possible spot fires being established there. Again, they had the exact same kind of situation that we were seeing in Christmas Valley where those burning embers were picked up, dropped out ahead of the blaze, and they did update the fire perimeter in that area where you can see that the fire itself has officially crossed Highway 88 there. And then you can actually see some of those red dots that represent some of those spot fires that were pushing closer towards Kirkwood. And then interested to see what it looks like up in this area. As of right now, this fire perimeter hasn't been updated too recently. You can see it's still up above Highway 50, but we have now confirmed that it's crossed Highway 50 and has worked into Christmas Valley. But there is actually one example of how that spotting happens. So you'd like to have a big road like this just to be able to stop the fire in its tracks, and I believe that was originally their strategy. What they were hoping to do was be able to stop that fire using Highway 50 as almost like a containment line, but your containment lines are only as good as the winds are calm, because even if you have some good protection on Highway 50 here, all it takes is one burning ember to be picked up by those 35-mile-per-hour wind gusts to be dropped on the other side of Highway 50, and then it starts burning back up into the major fire and then becomes established, where you see a large amount of fuels here. And we actually saw the video that I think matches that imagery right there. We can go back, somebody sent it to me. I believe it was actually our moderator Trish who sent it to me. So you can see it almost looks like it matches perfectly with that fire perimeter map. So on the left side of the road, you see where those flames are established. On the top of the screen here, there might actually even be a point where you can see what looks to be a cabin burning, but then you also see that smoke coming up on the right side of the road. So that basically perfectly matches up with what we're looking at right there. You're driving along Highway 50, you look up at the left side of the road, you can see those flames pushing down the hill, and then you look on the right, and there's a spot fire that has that smoke growing right there. And I will also just say, Patricia, thank you very much for the contribution. I don't know when I'm going to be able to get down to Best Buy. I live up in the mountains, so it's about an hour drive, and currently wrapping up my thesis, and I'm going to try to be doing 2 update and forecast videos a day, at least going through this red flag event for the Caldor Fire, given how crucial this is to get this information out there. But I believe I will be making my way down to Best Buy or the Apple Store at some point to upgrade the equipment and help make these videos better so there's less buffering in the future. So again, huge thanks to everybody who has been contributing. But key thing that I should maybe show now, because I haven't shown it in a while, is the evacuation order map. If you're new to the live stream, all of South Lake Tahoe is now in that mandatory evacuation order. So if you're still in the area, definitely get out. I don't usually show the live hotspots because I think it creates a little bit of an unnecessary fear, because it makes it look like the fire has extended much farther than it actually has, and it makes it look like everything underneath that would have been burnt at this point. But when I am mentioning the fact that the mandatory evacuation orders are in place, it does help to kind of drive the point home that the satellites are picking up a large amount of heat in this area. Not saying that everything underneath here is burned, or even that there is heat in some of these areas. We've seen these hotspots be off by a mile or 2 in the past, but southwesterly winds are continuing right now. Tonight, it's actually going to switch more southerly, which will act to try to push those spot fires that have been established in Christmas Valley farther towards the north. So if you are still in the South Lake Tahoe area, I would definitely take this mandatory evacuation order seriously and get out. And then also, apologies if I accidentally called it a warning. I don't know if anybody mentioned that in the live chat, but I did that earlier in the video, so don't know if I just did it again. But not a warning anymore for South Lake Tahoe. It is now a mandatory evacuation order, which means that it is the time to get out. So just driving that point home, what I was saying in this Christmas Valley area, so you can see, just to get our bearings here, that's the Caldor Fire here. That's the section where it's pushed far up to the northeast here. This is where it has started to, where it has crossed Highway 50. Again, this is old fire perimeter data, but hopefully we'll get some new fire perimeter data pretty soon here. As of now, we have confirmation that spot fires have dropped into Christmas Valley. And then what I think is my main concern moving forward in the next few hours is the fact that as we get into the overnight hours tonight, don't know why that keeps popping up. As we get into the overnight hours tonight, we're actually going to have a little bit of a wind shift where the winds come from a much more southerly direction, and unfortunately still expected to be around 25 miles per hour. I believe the reason for that, the wind shift, most likely because it's the winds pushing towards Lake Tahoe during the nighttime hours. I believe that's a feature that we see in this area, but also because if we zoom in here, you can see based on the topography, let's not, again, I'm still learning how to drive this thing. So that's a pretty good illustration of what I'm trying to say. In Christmas Valley here, where these spot fires have been established, Lake Tahoe is far off in the distance there. Tonight, those southerly winds are still going to be blowing at about 25 miles per hour. Unfortunately, we saw there's going to be very poor relative humidity recovery, which is a fancy way of saying it's going to be dry overnight. Our humidity is still going to be in the 20s at we can actually look at it instead of me just telling you. Humidity is still going to be in the 20s at 2 a.m. Normally you'd like to see that come up to 70 to 80% because that would calm the fire down. But at 2 a.m. we're still going to be in the 20s with wind gusts around 25 miles per hour, which is conditions that you'd possibly see in the afternoon hours. So we're going to have very dry air here, even extending into tonight, mixed with those 25 mile per hour winds blowing directly through Christmas Valley here. So I think that is my number one concern moving forward for the next few hours and into tomorrow morning. The fact that the fire activity most likely is going to be able to continue overnight instead of calming down like we'd like to see. And then my main concern overall is the winds coming in Tuesday afternoon. You can see Tuesday afternoon. I hate to say it, but it's actually looking like an even more critical forecast than we've seen this afternoon. So all of that activity we saw yesterday was when it was just hot and dry. Then today, you can maybe disagree with me, but I would say today is worse than yesterday, and that's because it's hot, dry, and windy. Then if we get into Tuesday afternoon, it's going to be hot, dry, and windier than today. So unfortunately, this is going to be something that we have to follow for quite some time. If you look at the red flag warning itself, it has now been extended to 11 p.m. on Wednesday. So it used to end at 11 p.m. on Tuesday, but we're now expecting those strong winds to even continue into Wednesday as well. More similar conditions to what we had today. So that's going to just continue to... Man. So I would say I mentioned this in my update earlier this morning, but didn't say it with all that much conviction yet because I wasn't entirely confident in it yet. But I would say that in the 2 years that I've been doing these wildfire update and forecast videos, I would say that this is the worst situation that I've seen. Just based on the fact that as of right now, we have confirmation. I'm going to get off of those live hotspots because that makes it unnecessarily scary. But we do have confirmation that some of those hotspots have been established in Christmas Valley. You can see where there are all those structures here. And the forecast is not going to be giving us any break over the next couple of days. And it's actually expected to get even worse tomorrow. So I mentioned that it might be in the top 5 critical situations that I've personally updated and forecasted for in the last 2 years, and I covered all the 2020 fires in depth, but I would now say that this is the most critical situation that I personally have followed so far, and hopefully it's the most critical situation that I ever follow. But yeah, somebody I think summed it up perfectly in that live chat. It's a perfect storm. That basically sums it up. It's almost everything that could work against us is working against us. It's warm, it's dry, we have that relative humidity in the low teens to single digits, and we have wind gusts, not only strong up to 35 miles per hour, but blowing in the exact direction that we don't want them to be blowing. You can see the areas where we have the most structures on the northeastern section of the fire there in Kirkwood, and southwesterly winds are act to just push that fire directly into those areas. So that's why we're just going to have to continue to follow these fires as we move forward. And that did also remind me that I saw that perfect storm comment. That was the first time I've looked at the live chat in probably 15 or 20 minutes. So again, apologies if anybody's been posting. Actually, let's update this, see if we have a new fire perimeter. So apologies if anybody has been asking any questions in the live chat or suggesting cameras. Sometimes the best way to contact me, because if you post something in the live chat, it might, by the time I look back over, it might be way in the past. So sometimes the best way to actually contact me while I'm doing these live streams is on Twitter, especially if you have a link to a camera or a video that you think would be helpful to make this video better. That's usually the best place to contact me, and it looks like some people maybe actually have. Yeah, I'd say that pretty much sums it up. This is a pretty bad situation that we have right now. This is a new one as well. Thought this post might be helpful. Thank you very much. So again, this is one of the most useful things. If you have some video or you even see a useful tweet that you think might help make this video better, important information that we could get out there, you can send it to me on Twitter at Holt Hanley Weather, and then I can pull it up in the video, and then all the people that are watching get to see it as well. So just want to see where exactly this was coming from. Fire on both sides of Christmas Valley. Here's what I see on the Caldor Fire on Highway 89 south of Myers. So see the activity going on right there. And then he says both sides of Christmas Valley. So I wonder if in this video, if he pans around and then shows fire activity on the other side. So we see it over there. And then does he perhaps pan over and then we see it on the other side of Christmas Valley? Because this would actually be some new information that we didn't know yet. As of right now, we just thought it was on that western side of Christmas Valley. But it does look like maybe some of those spot fires have been established on the eastern side as well. So again, thank you very much for sending that so that I could show that in this imagery, because again, that's one of the main reasons that I do these videos. It's often hard to find out exactly what's going on in a wildfire. I know that. I've lived in California my whole life. I've been evacuated a couple times on fires. I was directly in between the CZU and the SCU lightning complex fires last year. So I know how stressful it can be when you can't find active information. So always very helpful when people send in the information so that I can try to collect it and then be able to kind of be the medium for all the information that we're all collecting. And also, I just saw in the live chat, huge thank you to Jimmy for the very generous super chat. Again, very glad to hear that your family was able to make it. I believe that I remember you saying in the live chat that your family was from the Janesville area and you were able to make it out of that area safely. One thing I will say to Jimmy, and apologies if I'm remembering this wrong, that you are from the Dixie fire area and were evacuated for that spot fire that moved into Janesville, but I do want to mention that there's actually also a critical situation going on the Dixie fire right now. I believe I saw 2 reports that said this was actually a firing operation that maybe got out of hand. Actually, before I say that, I just want to confirm that what I'm about to say is true. So it was Zeke Lunder. So he says, the active part of the fire north of Greenhorn Ranch ran about 11 miles, 30,000 acres to the east today. It sounds like this was the result of a large firing operation along dozer lines on the top of Grizzly Ridge north of Greenhorn Ranch. So coming back over to the Dixie fire, in the past, when we were looking at live hotspots, it looked like it was just that area east of Taylorsville, but you can see that it has just absolutely blown up throughout the day today. You could see that on the satellite imagery itself with that large pyrocumulus cloud coming off right there. So with that being said, you can see, again, I don't always trust this hotspot map, but it does look like some of those hotspots are getting closer to some of these communities here, and he said it was mostly moving east. So again, that's big concern for those communities there. We do have some new evacuation orders in place on the Dixie Fire. It looks like there are some new evacuation orders, especially where it looks like we're seeing that hotspot activity to the southeast of Lake Almanor. You can almost match up those two maps where you see Lake Almanor up here, that massive increase in activity on the Dixie Fire today, and where it appears we have some of those new evacuation orders. It's like Plumas County doesn't actually show what towns we're looking at there. But that is a big update, and I was reminded of that because I believe, Jimmy, you are from the Dixie Fire area. So if you have any friends or family in these areas, I would definitely let them know that there are some new evacuation orders in place on the Dixie Fire. And I'm very glad you reminded me of that, because that we've been following the Caldor Fire so much, it's easier to forget about some of the other fires going on. But that is also a very critical situation. So that did remind me of how useful it is to get some of the most recent information. Let's see if we have another one that just came in. Actually, let's check the fire scanner. Again, I have a fire scanner, but I find that it's actually more distracting than useful in these kind of situations. So what I do instead, this is a great account to follow, go to CA Fire Scanner on Twitter, and he basically just posts the most important things that you need to know from what he's hearing from the fire scanner. And then he also retweets a lot of great posts as well. So from Santa Claus Drive, we have fire on both sides of the valley. This is from just east of Highway 89. So let's see if we can match this up. Because Highway 89, Santa Claus Drive, California. Let's see if it brings us to somewhere useful. No guarantees. Okay, so right there, that's our first time we've had a confirmation of where we actually have those spot fires in place. So we have Santa Claus Drive right there. Zooming out just to get our bearings again, you can see there's the northeastern section of the Caldor Fire. Lake Tahoe's up here. Zooming in to Santa Claus Drive right there within Christmas Valley. So looking in the valley itself right here, we have Echo Summit up on the left up here. We had reports of it jumping over Highway 50. And then let's now look at the video itself. So you can see that torching going on in the distance there, and it says fire on both sides of the valley. So I didn't want to confirm it when we saw that from that first report, because I usually like to get information from multiple sources before I actually confirm anything. But we've now seen two, video evidence of the fact that it now seems like the Caldor Fire is on both sides of the Christmas Valley. We've seen now two videos where the person who's filming looks over to this side of the valley. You see some flames, then they look over to this side of the valley. So where that fire perimeter was earlier today, all the way up here, it now looks like those southwest winds have not only allowed that fire to move down all the way to cross Highway 50 right here, but we're now seeing those spot fires both on the western edge, and now apparently it has spotted over to the eastern edge of the fire as well, or eastern edge of Christmas Valley as well. So that's especially concerning, because now that means that it has jumped. I believe this is Highway 89 right here. Yeah, so that's Highway 89. What I was hoping was that there's some kind of silver line that maybe Highway 89 would be able to keep it from moving farther to the east right here at least, and that could almost be used as maybe like a containment line. But clearly that was just wishful thinking, because those strong southwesterly wind gusts have picked up those burning embers, put them on the eastern side of Christmas Valley, and we now have some spot fires over there. And then just to reiterate, my main concern moving forward into tonight is when we look at the valley. So we can now confirm we have some spot fires on both sides of the valley here. Tonight, we're going to have some relatively strong southerly winds, especially for nighttime hours, coming through this valley tonight, pushing towards Lake Tahoe, which would act to try to push this fire farther up to the north here. And then it's also going to be combined with very dry conditions as well. What you would like to see is relative humidity and maybe get up to 60-70%, but what we're actually going to see tonight, or at least as of 2 a.m., which was when we looked at this, relative humidity staying in the around 20%, which means that it's going to remain very active throughout the overnight hours, and it's going to be not only dry, allowing that fire activity to continue, but we also have those 25 mile per hour southerly winds that will try to push some of those spot fires that we've had farther towards the north there. So again, thank you for sending that to my Twitter account. That was, or I believe actually that was on the fire scanner, retweeted that one, but we now can confirm that it is on both sides of the valley at this point. So see a new notification just came in. Looks like it's maybe just people following my Twitter, but again, I will say if you have any videos or comments that you think would be useful, this is usually the best place to suggest content or send a video to me. I'm usually pretty bad at looking at the live chat and talking about maps at the same time. So just going to take a quick sip of water real quick. Please inform Holt that the word both does not have an L in it. Oh, that's pretty funny. Yeah, you should hear me say milk. Yeah, I have a whole bunch of weird things like that. Pello as well. That actually reminds me, anybody who watched that, my update this morning, apologies again for saying Kirkland instead of Kirkwood. I have no idea why that came out. I also said 3 to 4 acres when I meant to say 3 to 4 miles of growth, which is a pretty big difference there. So yeah, certainly, and any mispronouncing of towns as well. Some people don't let me know when I mispronounce towns, but because they think I'd maybe take it personally, but I actually love when people correct me on how I'm mispronouncing things, because then I can correct it in the future and not sound like such a non-local to the Tahoe area. So I did also see that somebody asked about Dixie, so I do want to just mention that briefly. There's actually some huge updates on the Dixie fire. You can see the massive increase in behavior that we had throughout the day today. This area you can see is fueled by those strong wind gusts, just like the Caldor fire was today. And if we look at the hot spots, according to Zeke Lunder on Twitter, it was maybe a firing operation that perhaps got out of hand, or maybe this was actually the plan. I can't actually confirm that yet, but it sounds like about 30,000 acres have increased on the Dixie fire right here. Again, this is southeast of Lake Almanor that we're looking at. I don't actually imagine this was the plan, because that is a massive increase in fire behavior, and you can see that some of those hot spots, while I don't always trust this map and where those hot spots are, you can see that it looks like they're getting much closer to these communities than we'd like to see. And we do have some new evacuation orders in place on the Dixie fire. So that is definitely something, if you're in the Dixie area, to stay updated on. If you have that red color over you, that means it's a mandatory evacuation order, and you have to get out now. If it's that yellow color, it's still a warning, which means you should start getting ready. And I imagine on the Dixie fire, just like on the Caldor Fire, we're most likely going to have some poor relative humidity recoveries tonight where it remains very dry, and maybe some strong wind gusts tonight as well. So definitely going to be important to stay updated with the Dixie Fire information, as fire activity will most likely be continuing through the overnight hours. Yeah, Kirkland is the Costco product name. I think it was maybe just a Freudian slip, because I know I have to go grocery shopping at some point here. But probably not for the next couple of days, because I do plan on doing these the concise update and forecast video every morning, which I tried to do today. Again, it was 30 minutes long this morning, where I try to just get all the most important information about the Caldor Fire in a more condensed format. Tomorrow I'll try to make it even more condensed than 30 minutes. That's a bit long for a concise format. But then I'll also continue to do these live streams in the afternoons and into the nighttime hours, because for whatever reason, for the 2021 season, our most active time has actually been at about 6 to 9 o'clock, which has been very different than what I've seen in the past, where you usually have the majority of your wildfire activity at about 4 p.m., where it's the hottest, the driest, the windiest. But this year we've seen the majority of our fire activity picking up in the evenings and then continuing into the overnight hours, which has been strange to say the least. But just to drive home the point that the video updates will continue to be necessary. Again, I'll do a concise one tomorrow morning, but then where I talk about all the updated information based on what more information I can collect between now and tomorrow morning. But then more importantly, talking about going really in-depth into tomorrow afternoon's forecast, because I hate to say it, but tomorrow afternoon is looking even worse than today. So let's try to click into Strawberry Valley here. We'll choose Myers as our point. So tomorrow afternoon, it looks like we're going to have warm temperatures again. Looks like it's going to be very dry again, with relative humidity in low teens to the single digits. But most importantly, the winds are actually expected to be even stronger throughout tomorrow afternoon. So that's literally the last thing that we want to see. And you see that they're from the southwesterly direction, which will just continue to try to push these hotspots farther towards the northeast and into these communities around South Lake Tahoe, and this hotspot to the west of Kirkwood, closer towards Kirkwood. Again, I still can't confirm that the fire has reached Kirkwood yet, although we did see some reports that there were some spot fires in that area. What I can confirm, though, is that this fire that was up on Echo Summit has officially spotted into Christmas Valley and is now on both sides of Christmas Valley. We're going to have some southerly winds pushing in tonight. We can look at that right there. Southerly winds pushing in tonight and remaining strong throughout the overnight hours tonight, which will continue to try to push that fire farther up towards the north, which is, again, the last thing we'd want to see, because you can see how many structures are in that area. And that's going to be combined with some very dry conditions tonight. Relative humidity not even getting above 30% as of 2 a.m. So we'll likely continue to see activity overnight. So I think that concise update tomorrow morning based on what happens overnight will be important. But a very important thing to look at going forward is, unfortunately, tomorrow afternoon, relative humidity in the low teens to single digits. So just as dry as the last 2 days. But probably the last thing we want to see, even windier tomorrow afternoon than it was today. So I usually don't try to err on the negative side, but again, I will repeat that I've been doing these update and forecast videos for about 2 years now, and this is the most critical situation that I've personally ever forecasted for. So I will do my best to continue to try to get the most important information out there throughout this entire event until we can wrap up this situation. In the meantime, I'll just say, at this point, there's really not much we can do. Mother Nature is basically going to decide how this ends up when it's that dry, that windy, and we have this much fire activity going on. There's just not that much you can do except evacuate. So if you're in that red area, that's where there's a mandatory evacuation order and you should get out now. But it could also ring alarm bells for anybody else in California. I know it certainly has for me to get a fire plan in place and maybe do some structure protection around your property, maybe clearing out some unnecessary bushes, leaves, clean your gutters, that kind of stuff, just because we are in the peak of wildfire season, and unfortunately we will continue to have these kind of update and forecasts as we move forward. So if you want to stay tuned for that, you can subscribe to this channel. Thanks again to everyone who has been posting great questions, comments, and super chats in the live chat. Huge thank you, as I'll be able to hopefully update my computer pretty soon so that there's less buffering in future videos. Also, big thank you to everyone who's been posting the videos and comments to my Twitter. That definitely helped make this video much better throughout the day today. That was actually where I got a lot of the most important information that we found, was from you guys sending in videos to my Twitter account. So big thank you there, as that definitely helped. And again, I'll be back early tomorrow morning for a concise update on what happens throughout the rest of tonight, as we will likely have continued activity. And then I'll certainly be back tomorrow night for an extended forecast, so you can subscribe if you're interested in continuing to hear about the Caldor Fire. Last thing I'll leave you with is that mandatory evacuation order for all of South Lake Tahoe. Huge thank you to all the wildland firefighters out there. I can't imagine how hard their jobs must be right now with this just unprecedented fire event that we have going on, with the very critical fire weather conditions certainly making it about as difficult as it possibly could be on them. Big thoughts and prayers go out to everybody who has been affected by these wildfires. And overall, I hope this video is helpful, and thanks for watching. I'll see you all tomorrow.